Quick greetings. Welcome to another video. I would like to first send a big thank you to all the viewers who made my last video my second most watched video. In the most sincerest way, I would like to say thank you. As a result of that last video, my subscriber numbers have gone up. And I finally at least got to 1K subscribers. So I am beyond grateful, but I am also very humbled because I'm touched, because I think the message I'm getting is that this is a very important topic to many of Americans, so-called Indians. And so I'm so glad we are having the conversation. And I really, if I don't get to all your comments, I am working to that. I want to say, if you go to my my YouTube channel and you read the description of the channel, there is a link that says more. And if you click on that link, you will scroll down and you will see contact information. Now, again, may take time to get to any emails. And so I just ask that you be patient. Okay, so we want to continue the conversation of sovereignty. So I thought I would try to make this a fairly quick video, but I find that I just start making long videos. And so I want to try to keep this short. So I thought maybe we could start by, we did say we were going to talk about the video I linked that gave a very quick overview of sovereignty, but I think I want to jump and save a little time and maybe just build on that video and that conversation. So I humbly ask that we take this walk through what I thought would be a good way to extend the conversation of sovereignty. So I would like to share my screen. I thought maybe we could start with the question that I threw out to AI. And the question was, were Indians sovereign before colonization? Okay. So we just want to get the general consensus, right? And let us read together. Yes, indigenous peoples in North America are often referred to as Indians in historical context. I'm sorry, let's start again. Yes, Indians, we are having some brain fog. Indigenous peoples in North America, often referred to as Indians in historical context, were sovereign nations before European colonization. Okay. Let us bring to mind what colonization, how did that start? Before we go any further, because they're not saying something here that I think we need to insert. What was European colonization based upon? Uh, European colonization in the Americas was based on a church doctrine known as the doctrine of discovery. You see, we need to be clear as Americans what started this colonization process. So the general consensus is yes, indigenous peoples in North America, Americans, often referred to as Indians or American Indians, in historical context. So historically, before colonization, we were sovereign nations. Okay? So what changed that is what we're trying to figure out. How did the meaning of sovereignty change after colonization? How did we become what they are referring to as domestic dependent, sovereigns with limited authority or something of that sort, which is nonsense? Who is taking the authority to limit our sovereignty that we had in full before colonization? So that means we had our own way of dealing with, say, what they call legal issues, right? We had some form of a court system. So that means we didn't need to go into anyone else's courts, right? Right. Fast forward today, now we're entering into our colonizers' courts. Okay? So our sovereignty is compromised. What gives colonizer continued extended right to dominate a land of sovereign people, men and women, known as American so-called Indians? What is extending their right to presume domination over us? So in other words, their sovereignty is just a little better than our sovereignty. Based on what? The doctrine of discovery is the ultimate answer. Before we get into all the madness, we have to start at the beginning. What brought the European nations here? It was a doctrine of discovery. So here's a breakdown of what that means when we talk about Americans being sovereigns. Inherent sovereignty. So we had what they're referring to here as inherent sovereignty. It was just part of who we were, being the people of this land. So our sovereignty wasn't granted by any external power. We didn't have to go up in someone else's court to figure out if we were sovereign, right? It was inherent. It was inherent. It was an inherent right stemming from their existence as self-governing entities long before European arrival. So what is the destiny of Americans, so-called Indians? It is to get that sovereignty back. Unchecked sovereignty. Because if you're checking my sovereignty, you are compromising my inherent sovereignty. Next point, self-governance and political systems. Now, some people will say our systems were very similar to our colonizers. Similar does not mean the same. Okay? Theirs were greatly different from ours because their political systems dominated our sovereignty. So there is a problem there. There is a dishonoring of our inherent sovereignty. So there is a problem with this political system, isn't there? Now, I always say we are peaceful Indians, but when we deliver our message, it's going to be with the force of our ancestors' voices. We're not playing around here, y'all. So, again, point number 2, self-governance and political systems. Did we need a Supreme Court from a foreigner? First, let us agree, is that a foreign court? Well, when did it arrive? When did that court arrive here? Way after our existence on this land. What does that mean? It means it arrived with colonization. What does that mean? It's not a court that has true jurisdiction over American Indians. It is a product of conquest, duress, non-meeting of minds. It voids the entire alleged contract, even the Constitution, if we want to go all the way with this narrative. The Constitution is a product of conquest. It was something meant for foreigners, but then it got extended to American Indians. It shouldn't have. They did not want to honor our sovereignty, y'all. They're saying we're like a separate nation. So would you do this to another nation? Would you be able to just haul them into your courts because they're there? No. No. You wouldn't be able to assume plenary authority of another nation like this system presumes over us, a plenary authority that is not even a word in the Constitution. So where would a word like that come from if it's not in the Constitution? A word like supreme authority or plenary authority over Indians is derived from the doctrine of discovery, which is a church doctrine. In a country that professes separation of church and state. So, indigenous nations had their own complex political and legal structures, diverse governmental and family structures, laws and systems of justice and governance, according to the Center for First Nations Governance. Some were organized by leaders rather than rulers, governed by consensus rather than decree, and directed by a sense of community more than individualism. It doesn't matter because none of that is here today. When we have an entity that assumes that just because their system are what they're calling similar to what we had, that, oh, well, you should just have our system instead of yours. No, thank you, sir. No, thank you, civilized tribes. We want to stop here for a minute because they're leaving out something else. They're talking in generals. When these Europeans got here, they found Algonquins, but they're not talking about the political system exclusively of Algonquins. They're talking in generals again, something they do when they grab jurisdiction. If they were more precise, they would say something in the Iroquois Confederacy and their form of governance is what this corporation chose out of many diverse governmental and family structures, right? So they chose one group of Indians, the Iroquois Confederacy, according to what they say and what they tell us. Okay, so then would that apply to all Indians? What am I saying? I'm saying even if you did grab one type of governance from a group of Indians that were not really a cohesive group like the Algonquins. What I'm saying is the Iroquois, as I often have said, they gathered around them other language speaking Indians. So it was Iroquois and Indians that spoke other than Iroquois. So they more or less had to have a system based on bringing together people that were not part of their original clans, people who spoke other linguistic Indian languages, if you will. Okay, the Algonquins all spoke the same language. They didn't really need a political structure like the Iroquois. So, as well, the Iroquois had to create a great law of peace for that Iroquois confederacy only. I like to point out that the Great Law of Peace was not something that spread to all Indians. It definitely was not applied in the Iroquois Confederacy's relations with Algonquins. If you ask me, Iroquois are a breakoff of Algonquins. And I think that has something to do with colonizer Moorish influence. I think the Iroquois were probably the first people to really meld with the Moors that came here before the Caucasian Europeans came here to marry into Indians and start to change up our political systems and create a system like the Iroquois had, so that when the European, I'm sorry, when the more Caucasian Europeans arrived, they would gravitate towards something the Moors have already set up. I believe that's how it was planned. So let's get back to this reading. Okay, so we read all that. Okay, so what they're not saying is they're basing everything on the Iroquois structure, not any other group of Indians in the Americas. Okay, so those Indians will fall by the wayside. The other Indians who are not Iroquois will fall by the wayside and be the recipients of the wonderful misnomer of Black. Okay, they will become indentures to the civilized tribes, which were Black at first. Okay, so point number 3, we defined our territories and resources. I'm sorry, resource control. Indians defined their territories and resource control. They occupied and exercised governmental authority and property rights over defined territories, including their lands and resources. So what I want to say here is we didn't have states, yet we still had defined territories. We would not have called them states. States belong to your colonizer. And when you take on the label of a state, you are taking on submission to your colonizer. That's why we need to recall our previously defined territories. Whether it was what was known to be Iroquois and what was known to be Algonquin, it has to go back to American Indians. The only way it even gets called up is if we call it up. There is nothing in this system that will do that because they don't want to. Why? Because that would mean we were here before they were. That's why we don't want states. You are automatically a colonized Indian when you say or promote the idea that you live in a state. No, you don't. You live on your whatever your Indian nation was. You live on your ancestral, I should say, birthright land. It is not a state. Don't call it that. If you expect to get your land back, you got to call it by its name. Call a state, you're going to get colonizer with it. I don't care what they tell you. That is colonizers' overlay on your land that gives them dominion over you in their world. Okay? So, international recognition, pre-colonization. Historically, American Indian tribes were recognized as fully independent political entities, both internally and externally, in their ability to maintain relations of peace and war with other sovereign governments. This is before any United Nations, y'all. United Nations is not the way to go because the United Nations does not recognize our what? Inherent sovereignty. Okay, we can't hide them. They are riding right along with what colonizers established. In fact, it was this government that spearheaded the United Nations. What am I saying? The United Nations is a creation of the United States. Once they got here, now they're looking to dominate the whole entire world. They just needed our landmass to do it, right? And what became of us? Huh. Need we say? Need we say? Black Africans, Negroes, coloreds. Need we say what happened to us? It was a paper genocide, okay? Paper genocide. Because we were the first people, we had to be paper genocided. Native Americans were not paper genocide. What they got was basically put on the map to take our place. Native Americans are our replacements. But unfortunately, they're back. The American Indians are back. So we didn't need a United Nations. We don't have to join one. We shouldn't take part in anything that's going on today unless we are seen as who we are. We are a separate thing from this United States. We are peaceful, but we are separate. We have every right to be separate. And we have every right to run our land. If we don't want GMOs grown on our land anywhere, ultimately we have the right to say, this is not good for our health. If you are dominating the food industry, that means, once again, you're sidestepping my sovereignty, my right to eat healthy on my land. If you want to grow GMOs, go home and do that. Feed it to your families. Treaties as evidence. I love this. The fact that there were treaties, although they were bogus because it was all done under what? Duress. No contract can stand if element of duress were there. That's even in their system. That is their system that they're not going by. They create a system and then they have the right to not go by it. Do you see how that works, American Indians? When you create something, you have a right to change it, and there is nothing anyone can do or say. Why? Because it's your creation. Once they created blacks, they could do whatever they want to with those blacks, those colors, those Negroes, those African Americans. That's why we have to recreate everything under our dominion as American Indians. Everything else is just the strings that make you someone else's puppet. Everything. A state is a string that makes you someone else's puppet. Being a citizen is a string that makes you someone else's puppet. Being black is a string that makes you someone else's puppet. Indian is as well, but that is the thing that most describes our position in this little misclassification game. Once we own that what belongs to that entity called an Indian, we will then reclaim our true identity, more truer identity as simply Americans. We will probably, once we start to govern ourselves and control our resources or get compensated for the use of our land and resources in any way we want to be compensated. I say, let's not do fiat dollars. When the Queen, we talked about this, when the Queen was approached with the payoff for the debts that this United States racked up, the Queen said, no, I refuse your fiat. The only payment I will take is you taking more credit from me. What does that mean? You will be indebted to me for as long as I choose. What am I saying? What I'm saying is we don't have to accept fiat. Okay? As compensation for the use of our land. What we can say is anything in your system is free to us. That's the compensation. It's like the credit that the Queen insisted upon in her sovereign capacity. Well, we're sovereigns as well. What did we just read here? Were Indians sovereign? Yes, we were. Inherent in the fact that this is our land above anyone else's who is a foreigner. So treaties as evidence. European powers and later the United States entered into treaties with indigenous nations, which served as formal acknowledgments of their sovereignty. These agreements were often similar in form to treaties between European nations. They were similar, but once again, that word similar, but not the same. Why weren't they the same? Because those other European nations were treated as being in their full sovereign capacity. We, on the other hand, baby, we were just prisoners of war. It was duress, y'all. That is why those treaties are null and void. Everything being done against or for or whatever, or I seen it in cooperation with Indians is really voided because it was all duress. Even if the Beaver Wars, which were Iroquois and colonizer against Algonquins, even if Algonquins lost, that didn't give them the right to try to remove our existence from the face of the planet, because that is exactly what happened. It would be totally different if the defeat meant, okay, you, as American Indians, you are over here, and as Iroquois joined forces with the British, we are over here, but you're still American Indian. The thing with the wars in America is that it left Indians without their identity, which is quite interesting, because what is that doing? That's taking away your right to be sovereign on your land. If you don't have the Indian identity, then what the Iroquois helped to accomplish was to genocide you, genocide you from your own birthright. Now that is an egregious thing for another alleged Indian tribe to do to another. It's one thing, again, to defeat me in war with the help of colonizers. Algonquins had help too, but the French did not provide us with weaponry the same way the British provided the Iroquois with weaponry. And the French, the excuse the French had was, well, we weren't sure you were Christian enough. If you wasn't fully Christian, well, we're not going to give you any weapons. How can you be my ally and not help me in a war? French, how? Because you are biased, just like the British are, and the British are your cousins. So truly, it was all, if you ask me, it was all a coup, y'all. They knew how much land Algonquins had, and once the British got it, the French knew that they're a shoo-in. They don't have to trade with Algonquins anymore when they can take what belongs to Algonquins. And the Iroquois co-signed on that. Okay? Now, I want to say this to our people, melanated Indians. Originally, the language of the Eastern Woodlands, the oldest language was Algonquin. What I'm trying to tell you, as I always say, is the further you go back, the more Algonquin the Eastern Woodlands were, and beyond, because Algonquin's language spread past, as I always say, the Mississippi River. So there was a predominance of Algonquins in North America. Once colonizer infiltrated, then you had the Iroquois breakoff, is the only thing that is making sense to me. Because if Iroquois, the word itself, is an Algonquin word, it's just do the math. Just do the math. Iroquois have to say, I say this all the time as well, they have to claim that they didn't have a language. Why? Because they can't admit that their original language was Algonquin. They can't say that they had a writing system. Let me correct that. They somehow had a language, but they did not have a writing system, the Iroquois confessed. So my assertion, or the way I see it, is that, oh yeah, they had a writing system, but they had to give it up to become Iroquois and set the stage to start to say that they are just as old as Algonquins. Yes, you are, because you were formerly Algonquin. So yeah, you would be have a very similar timeline, but just like how I'm not going to go there, but the Moors are doing the same thing. They're extending their timeline by adding the timelines of Americans. So they can say they've been around forever, but they won't tell you that, oh, that's because we were once a priest class in the Americas, but we got kicked out when Akhenaten decided to uh, do what we intended for him to do and completely genocide the deities that ancient Americans knew of. We're not going to go too deep into that, but that's the book by Horace Butler, where he asserts that the original Egypt was in South America, Machu Picchu, Peru. Peru is a version of the deity that goes by the name of Heru. So Peru in ancient language, it means house of Heru, Heru. But that's for people, who have a little bit of so-called Egyptian knowledge. Really, we didn't call it Egypt when it was in the Americas, but that's what it was renamed by Negropeans. It's just call a thing a. Next bullet point: modern recognition Even today, the U.S. Constitution and subsequent legal frameworks acknowledge the sovereignty. Now, here they're not telling the truth. They're not telling the truth. They do not acknowledge the full sovereignty of tribal nations at all. They say they're domestic dependent. What they don't want to say, and if you notice, well, let's see. The Constitution hasn't been mentioned yet, but we will see, I think, in the next slide, that they don't even mention Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, y'all. That is the sovereign Indian. It's at Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. The other Indians are commercial. The 5 civilized tribes are commercial entities, not Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indians. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indians are sovereign. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 Indians are commercial entities called tribes that the federal government has authority over because they created them. What happened was the federal government said, I'm not dealing with the Indians that I deem uncivilized. I'm only going to go with the Indians that agree with my domination, and they shall be called the civilized tribes, the Iroquois Confederacy, and even to the degree that the Lenni Lenape are involved, or any other civilized or federalized Indians. You know, they're all commercial corporations that have shucked birthright for a fictitious commercial identity to make money. You might say commercial Indians have basically said, to hell with the land, show me the fiat. That's basically what commercialized federal or recognized civilized Indians, that's what they are basically saying. They say, just show me some fiat, and I'm good. So it's basically Indians who have sold their birthright. Okay? In return, they agree to be dominated. Just show me some fiat. And the corporation, oh my God, they make those. Oh man, I hate to call it such, but them hoes got to jump through hoops for that fiat, yo. It's like in Sparkle when that dude had a sister bark for me. Like, get on your knees and bark. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's the image I get. But it's being done for, do what I say to get a little bit of fiat. But when you don't have sovereignty, fiat really doesn't help you because you just don't have any decision-making, land rights. You don't make any decisions. They're being made for you by your daddy. The feds. You're a federal Indian. Okay? So modern recognition. Even today, the U.S. Constitution and subsequent legal frameworks acknowledge the sovereignty of tribal nations. That's some BS right there. Establishing a government-to-government relationship between the U.S. federal government and these nations, according to the Northwest Center for Public Health Practice. Health? Y'all know you don't give a darn about health, evidenced by the type of food that we got going on, right? You are monetizing food because once you genetically alter food, you can basically have some kind of patent on that, right? So that's a means for what? Money, or what they calling money, which this is simply fiat monopoly dollars from your colonizer that you got to pay back with interest. That's why the public debt is so damn high. It's a whole fictitious debt, but once you've been made fiction, well, I guess it's your debt. You see, American Indians are not fictional like civilized tribes are. Yeah, you're a corporation, you're a fiction. You are in commerce just like where the Moors need you to be so they can dominate. In commerce without a birthright. Imagine that, just swimming in the ocean of commerce with no footing on land because you have no birthright. You are being dominated by your colonizer, no less. Important note, it's crucial to understand that the concept of sovereignty in these contexts refers to the inherent right and ability of indigenous nations to govern themselves and their territories as acknowledged both historically and legally, rather than an equality with the modern nation state system that emerged in the post-colonial era. Now, that's saying something, and I'm not sure what it is. So let's see. This looks like some kind of disclaimer saying that the sovereignty of the past is not exactly what we got going on today. And that would be the truth if that's what you're saying. But let's read it one more time. It's crucial to understand that the concept of sovereignty in these contexts refers to the inherent right and ability of indigenous nations to govern themselves as acknowledged both historically and legally, rather than an equality with the modern nation state system. So we're not equal to the modern nation state system, is what I'm hearing. But if you hear something different, let us know. So historically and legally, we're sovereign over our own land. See, we didn't have territories. We had the whole North America, Canada, South America, and the Caribbean islands. That is the American Indians, quote unquote, territory in its totality. But when you have a colonizer come along, he thinks that what he creates is equal to what you have. Meanwhile, he still does everything he can to erase what you had. So if it's equal to what I had, why do you have to erase it and deny it? Because what I had is superior to what you have. You have a world of commerce. You use commerce to grab authority over the resources of other people's birthright belongings, their crops, anything that can be made from the resources of their land now is under the control of someone else. So how can this uh, reading suggest that we are still sovereign? No, we're not. We are United States defined sovereign, which is not sovereignty. If you get a chance to look at Peter Dorico's book, this is an attorney in the corporation now who looked behind the curtain and saw the great and not so mighty wizard and said, what? Federal Indian law, according to this attorney, Peter Dorico, is actually federal anti-Indian law. This man, he's in the right ballpark, I tell you that. He may not know about the original Indians, but Giovanni Verrazano can help in that area because he had a description of the Indians of the South, which were the Indians of all of the Americas. Same description. He said they were dark, not unlike Ethiopians, meaning we looked like African Negroes. Though we were not, we just looked like. Okay? So we've gotten through this reading amazingly with how long-winded I am. So this is an AI overview. Um, we know that AI is it tends to it's like a I want to say you search the same thing twice and you'll get similar but not exactly the same answer. So let's look at another search. Now I did the same search, but I think this time I capitalized some of the letters. And lo and behold, it had a kind of different answer. But let's go. It's still correct for the most part. It is correct when it's saying yes, we were sovereign. Well, that's again, we have the treat the even the mention of a treaty is giving you the big hint that we were supposed to be nations that had control of our lands. Even if a colonizer came here, if they respected our sovereignty, they would compensate us for the use of our land like in any other commercial exchange, y'all. So this is not commerce that we have going on here. I hope Indians understand that this is all conquest. You have no say over the food that's being produced on your very own land, Indians. You are not sovereign. I don't care what this United States tries to convince you of. They're lying. Okay? It's a lie. You control nothing, not even your own reservations when it comes to these civilized tribes. You don't control those reservations. That's a toss up. It depends on how the federal government feels on any given day of any given month of any given decade or any given century. Okay, it just depends, y'all. Maybe you could go by the phases of the moon to maybe get an idea of what how they're gonna dominate you today. Okay, it needs to be a freaking zodiac for this shit. Pardon my French. So we asked the question again, and here's the answer. And what I think I liked about this answer, if I'm correct, no, I'm not correct. No, this is not it. Okay, but let's just read it to get a more fuller answer. So this was the deeper dive. They said, and when you do it an AI search at the bottom, it'll say dive deeper or something like that. So when they dive deeper, this is what they say. Were Indians sovereign before colonization? Yes. So in both cases, the answer is yes. In all cases, the answers will be yes. And then they will begin to break down the BS, or if they go too far with it. Anyway, yes, indigenous nations in North America and all the Americas. Come on now, somebody talk about it. Yes, indigenous nations in North America possessed sovereignty long before the arrival of European colonists. Tribal sovereignty is described as an inherent, there's that word again, inherent pre-existing right that predates the United States. Indians predate the United States. Another reason why they don't truly have any jurisdiction over us. Simple laws of their own legal system. The thing that came before a thing is the dominant thing. States came before the District of Columbia. States should have been the dominant thing. But what happened was this federal beast came along, created a 14th Amendment, and then everyone became subject to the District of Columbia. States had state citizens. The federal government created United States citizens. What that means is those are citizens, but they have no specific state. So what are they? They are District of Columbia citizens in essence and in practice, really. When the federal government feels like sharing their domination with the state, they say, okay, you could play with the animals today. You could train Fido today. You could take advantage of Fido today. I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, I read that the federal government, somewhere in this complete domination, they decided to share the domination with with the states. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me here. You've got to be kidding me here. But nevertheless, federal Indians are federal creations. What they do with you afterwards, that's up to them. Not you. It's up to them. Okay. Sovereign? I think you better get the correct word for what Indians are today. It does begin with an S. But then it veers away to an LAVES. Okay, that's what it veers off to. Federal slaves. So it is not a power granted by an external government. What is the United States? It is an external government. Do they grant us power? Hell to the nah, nah, nah. Square the nah, 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 nah. Times the nah, 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 nah. Divided by the nah, 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 nah. Okay. That's why I said their courts have no jurisdiction over us. Um, we are dominating because, well, first of all, they're only talking about really federalized Indians. Right there, they're telling you we only have jurisdiction over federal Indians, not them Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indians, but we can cook up something to say that we have dominion over you guys too if we want to. Yeah, that's what we gotta stop you from doing, federal. You're a supplanter, land grabber, thief, and all of that. Okay, you are mixing and matching Indian tribes with Indians not taxed. Again, what is the difference between Indians not taxed and Indian tribes? One, you know that we're talking about a tribe. The other, maybe yes, maybe no. So yes, Indians not taxed are not necessarily or exclusively Indian tribes. Indian tribes are Indian tribes. Indians not taxed. Who the hell knows? That is for your supreme authority, foreign daddy to decide. If you don't, that's why Indians have to make it plain, say it loud. I'm sovereign and I'm proud, and you don't have no jurisdiction. You keep imposing your jurisdiction over my sovereignty because you're still using the doctrine of discovery that has been repudiated. Quite an ugly little monster, aren't you? Disgusting, in fact. In practice, this meant that prior to colonization, indigenous nations governed themselves. That's only prior to colonization. What they're trying to tell us, if we missed it, after we got infiltrated by this federal system that is foreign, that's why I hope Indians stop saying that we created this, because it's really going to mess us up, y'all. It's really going to keep the beast here, y'all. It really is. You mean the Iroquois, who were bought and paid for, helped to, I guess, influence this form of government? Separate, y'all. We were not all just one linguistic group over here. Okay, so stop speaking for the Iroquois because they don't speak for you. Not if you're not Iroquois or the five civilized tribes, and to the degree that the Lenni Lenape are involved, them too. Again, Indians, we have to know our lane. Stop claiming things that the Indians who are against all other Indians created, so that you can begin to create your own, so you'll never be seen as being your own demise. Now, it is clear that this federal system is in love with the Iroquois Confederacy, but other Indians have to know why. You have to stop trying to say that we were one big happy fucking family. I'm sorry to inform you, we were not. That doesn't mean we were bad or evil. It's just the truth. That's all. That's all. Can we at least go by the truth of the matter? We don't have to gloss it over, y'all. It only means further domination. If we keep taking the role of the Indians who were in bed with the colonizer, yo. and a treaty of peace, that peace did not extend to Algonquins. You must understand that. It never did. The Treaty of Peace was strictly for the Iroquois Confederacy members. And of course, I'm sure that the five civilized tribes also adopted it because the Cherokee are Iroquois. So the Cherokee will claim perhaps that they are, helped draft the Great Law of Peace. After all, they're the ones who knew how to write, not the Iroquois Confederacy, according to what I read. So what that told me is that as much talk that we got going on about Iroquois, it's looking to me that the Cherokee predate the Iroquois, y'all. It's just that they maybe changed their name to Cherokee, but we just trying to make logic out of it. The Cherokee are Southern, right? They knew how to write. What I read, I gotta find that, yo. It said that it was the Cherokee that taught the Iroquois how to write, yo. But the Cherokee are Iroquois. So what I'm trying to say is they seem to have, when I try to make sense of it, the Iroquois were more Southern Indians, right? Evidenced by the Cherokee, right? And that's where colonizer first came after Columbus. The next big expedition to North America, because Columbus only came to South America, as we know and we talk about a lot, right? So the next big expedition was the Giovanni Verrazano, where he came to the Roanoke in, was it 1580? It was the 1500s, y'all. Shortly after the 1400s, when Columbus came here, the frenzy started happening, right? So what I'm trying to say is somewhere in the South, the Cherokee were created, and they are the first emanation of the Iroquois. But the way the story is told, you'd think that the Iroquois of the North were first. And I'm going to tell you why they focus on the Iroquois of the North. You got to walk with me on this one. You see, what they're trying to promote is that Algonquins were northern, more northern than they were southern. If the Iroquois of the South revealed themselves to be the original Iroquois, that means the fight that took place without Algonquins took place in the South first. But they don't talk about that because they're trying to promote that. No, it was the five civilized tribes. This was their land first before Algonquin was more further up. Another thing that I realized is attempting to make the South as if it's the North. When you look at a map, notice that Virginia is Virginia, right? But right under Virginia is North Carolina, right? So wouldn't that give you the impression that Virginia is north? because you got a North Carolina. So if the top of Carolina is north, it almost sort of implies that Virginia is north. But Virginia is a southern state. I just found when it dawned on me that really it made me see that I think subconsciously what it does is it trains you to think that the Powhatans were northern Indians because they love to talk about how north the Algonquin are. No, we were southern. That's why, and the fight began in the South, but with the Iroquois against against the Algonquins. But then they focus more on New York-based Iroquois because the impression is that the Iroquois' enemies were more northern Algonquins. Algonquins didn't have a presence. That was all Muskogee. Yeah. And Iroquois on the down low because Cherokee are Iroquois. And again, we just want to try to figure out what was going on. This is not to say go out and hate on a tribe. It's just separation and knowing that when you claim to uh, be of these confederacies, you're basically it's a way of saying you agree. I mean, you can be a Cherokee or an Iroquois and still not agree with what they did. For like I'm not going to go into it, but there I know that the nation that my people stem from, I think they didn't really help, Powhatan and the Powhatan Confederacy, although he was the paramount chief of the whole area, including the area of where my Indians come from. It's just that we were a different we were not exactly part of that confederacy, but when that confederacy looked for backup, they came to my people, the Waipemiac. But the Waipemiac refused to help Powhatan. See how that worked, y'all. The Waipemiac were buttered up already by when the British came. So the Roanoke colony was basically where my Indians were from. We only saw the Briton in their nicey capacity, so we had no reason to really want a war against them, right? Meanwhile, they were using us to get to Powhatan, is how I now see it. So I'm trying to say I don't necessarily agree with what my nation did. So I can speak and say that in the end, it was a mistake what we did. Because all we befriended these, you know what I want to call them, right? I try to be respectful. We befriended these British, right? But at the end of the day, I'm sorry, we befriended these British. But at the end of the day, it didn't pay off for us. And maybe that is what the original civilized tribes and Iroquois Confederacy might be able to say to some degree. I maybe they can say I don't agree that the Iroquois set out to help make sure that Algonquins were as if they never were. I mean, to there's a loyalty issue. If it was the mafia, the Iroquois would be so out of the picture. In other words, if it's about loyalty to your people, it would be a problem if we were the mafia, because you don't get in bed with a colonizer against your fellow Indians if you are indeed a fellow Indian. Now, if you're become so Moorish that you don't even identify as an Indian anymore, that's something you got to reckon with as well. But anyway, let's move on. Uh, Prior to colonization, indigenous nations governed themselves. Point blank, period. There was nobody saying, oh, your sovereignty is limited. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can have slot machines. Oh, no, you can't have slot machines. Oh, no, we're digging up your land. Oh, no, we're giving it to the state of Georgia. That did not happen until colonization invented this new sovereignty that has a lot in common with the definition of slavery and subjugation. So we establish and enforce our own laws. I don't even think Indians know what that means today. We are so given to running right to colonizer statutes, codes, rules, and regulations that we forget, wait a minute, do I have any of my own? Because I need to start. I need to start. I'm telling you, when you go by your colonizer's laws, you lose. It's not what's the word? It seems childish to say it's not fair, but it's not fair. They're not being fair. They're not treating you fairly. They're looking at you as and this is what you notice gets my goat, because all of this was done because we were seen as heathen and we're not Christians. And like I always say, y'all, I'll be running this into the ground. Once Indians became Christians, when I tell you that I think there's more uh, Indian Christians than they are in the entire state of Rome or whatever it is, are so Christianized, right? So you subjugating us now after we're Christians, it just makes zero sense, even in your framework. So they will actually see, that's what I mean. They go against their own rules to come for you. What should have happened is, oh, y'all are not Christians. Okay, here we're gonna throw some Bibles at you, and boom, now you're Christian. Okay, we'll go back home now. Thank you. We just want to make you Christians for God, our God. That didn't happen, y'all. They came and said you were heathen. They took your land. They made you Christian, and they still kept your land. If we have not been royally punked, I don't know what the show franchise is. The series Punked. Ours would have been the best episode. Ashton Kutcher. He would have made millions on that episode alone. How American Indian so-called Christians got punked by their religion and their foreign God. Come somebody talk about it. Okay. So in practice, this meant that prior to colonization, indigenous nations governed themselves and their territories. What were our territories? The entire Americas, all of them, establishing and enforcing their own laws, determining membership and managing their resources. How about that? Who's doing that today? What Indian is managing their resource without an overseer saying, nope, I don't agree with that. You can't do it. This is not sovereignty, y'all. They keep throwing that word, tribal sovereignty. The tribes are the least sovereign because it's Indians, not taxed, that are in actuality constitutionally sovereign. But they will get, once again, when they make the laws, they can proceed to interpret them any old kind of way. So now you have Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. They say, yeah, that's what it said, but we don't really go by that because look at this wonderful Commerce Clause down here. Well, you see, the Commerce Clause is down there for a reason, because the precedent article in the Constitution says we are sovereign. We're not counted in your census. We're not represented in your Congress. How are you making laws for us? You're going against your own, what you wrote. You wrote that up. That Constitution is a foreign creation. And they had to throw us a bone just so they could get their foot in the door. So the bone they threw was Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. And then they proceeded to act like it's not even there. They misinterpreted. They have all these debates about it. It is quite clear. Indians not taxed are not counted in your census, not represented in Congress. And that is the end of that. But nope, it drags out because of this Commerce Clause. So a Commerce Clause has the power to make a sovereign a slave now? But that's what you are. Let's be real. How does a Commerce Clause, where does it do that on other land, in other nations? Again, like we said, when the United States engages in commerce with China, does China become as if they're dominated by the United States just because they're doing commerce? It makes no sense. But because they made the Constitution, they say what it is and they go by it, y'all. Even it don't gotta make sense to nobody but them. This is my document. Them was my treaties. I drafted them up. I decide if you do treaty. We just did that because we were playing to the idea and the truth that you were sovereign. So we had to act like we were coming as if we were legitimate. This was conquest and lies. religious lies. So they had developed diverse and complex social structures and governance systems, including clan structures and kinship networks. Many societies were organized around these systems, influencing social organization and power dynamics. They need to say, we just like whatever, we just gravitated whatever the Iroquois said, that was what we applied to every Indian. Tribal councils and chiefdoms, these bodies played key roles in decision making, often utilizing consensus based approaches. Confederacies, these alliances united multiple tribes for mutual defense and trade while preserving individual tribal autonomy, according to 501. See, the confederacies that the Iroquois had were not only multiple tribes, but it was different linguistic groups. So in order for they were so small, is what I'm trying to say, that the Iroquois had to gather other linguistic Indians to join them, as well as colonizer who sanctioned all of this, to come for the much larger group of Algonquins. Okay. Now the Algonquins, they basically only alliance with other Algonquins. So they kept it in, they really sort of kept it in the family, so to speak, right? Whereas Iroquois went outside of their family to go get a band of thieves, or shall we just say compromised uh Indians, Negropean compromised Indians. Next thing you know, it is Algonquins that are slaves to, when they talk about the 5 civilized tribes having slaves, them was the Algonquins they took the land from, if you ask me. I'm just trying to use the common sense that the ancestors provide. Uh, why would why would the 5 civilized tribes enslave their own kinsmen? Because they weren't their kinsmen. They were enslaving, by and large, I'm going to say it had to be Algonquins. Now, they may have had some of their family doing some light work out of, something, but what I'm trying to say, it wouldn't really make sense for the civilized tribes to have their own people as slaves. Now, some people, there was the narrative that that was a way of, I think what was said was that was a way of keeping the farm, by, having indentures. I want to refer to, if anyone ever saw a video clip that showed a little boy working in the field in the South. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. His mother was working in the field and left the little boy, couldn't be more than 5 or 6 years old, with his even younger baby sister. And so his mother was out working the cotton field. She had to leave him alone. I ask you, what family member would do that to their own family? The scenario is she was an indentured. If she was working for people, that cared about her and her children, would they have her children there abandoned, left to fend for themselves? The little boy had a foot infection, I believe. He stepped on something and it caused his foot to be infected. Meanwhile, his mother has to work. She said she worked from sun up to sundown. For what? A penny a day, I think it was? Or two, something. It was nothing, y'all. Would 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 we do that to our family if we had our family as indentures? And I'm want to especially focus on the kids. Would they be left alone because they were? So could it be that the indentures really didn't even? It's like who they were working for weren't even around. It seems because the kids were left alone. But anyway, just some oddities that I guess will come out in the wash or the dry. It's just that, I'm trying to say that if there were Indians who were at enmity with each other, that would more likely be the scenario. That you would have the enemy Indians working hard in the field as your indenture and you somewhere, I don't know, uh, just collecting what the indentures are working. She had a quota she had to meet. She had to pick so much cotton, to make I can't say enough money because it wasn't enough. But anyway, let's move on. This inherent sovereignty was recognized at least initially by European powers who engaged in treaty negotiations with native nations, acknowledging their status as independent entities capable of conducting diplomacy and warfare. However, European colonization could significantly impacted and gradually eroded this sovereignty through various means, including disease, land dispossession, forced relocation, and attempts at cultural assimilation. Despite these challenges, the concept of tribal sovereignty persists and remains a central aspect of tribal. This is a joke. How can you say that after what you just said? A central aspect of tribal nations' identities and their relationships with the federal and state governments in the present day. Yeah, the present day federal, state, and governments dominate Indian tribes, but those are civilized Indians. That's the weird thing. You join, you become civilized, and you get treated like savage. So that was that. What I want to say here too is that what else eroded that sovereignty. Well, we already said it. Initially, it's the doctrine of discovery that gives them the right to pretend to make agreements and then just go against those agreements. You know, so it wasn't. What I'm trying to say was Article One, Section 8, Clause 3 was also what they were using as a means to say they had plenary authority, a word that's not in the Constitution, by the way. But somewhere between the Supreme Court and Congress, these two are basically playing colonizer ping pong with the subjects. As I said before, I read this as of like last night. I read that at one point the federal gave authority to the states because they didn't want to pay for health care or something. Yeah, I believe that's what it said. So that became something that they just, I don't want to take care of these slaves no more. It costs too much, you know. But you created the federal tribes. You created them, civilized and all of that. They're under initially they were creations of the federal, not the state. So it's ultimately, as I said, the federal that really is pulling this plenary authority over Indians. And then they give authority to states. So they still maintaining authority because if they can give it, that means they had it to give. So yeah, between the Supreme Court, we read that the Supreme Court created what do they call it? A vast body of laws for federal Indians. But then they're going to try to say that applies to all Indians. It doesn't. Not Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indian. And somehow they bridge that gap by somehow mentioning the Commerce Clause, that the Commerce Clause gives them the right to take Indians not taxed too. No, because you said Indian tribes. in the Commerce Clause. You didn't say Indians not taxed in the Commerce Clause. You described Indian tribes. Because ultimately, why was that done? It's because what the feds are saying is you can be free as long as you're by yourself. You can be sovereign as long as you're by yourself. But in our eyes, if you're in a tribe, you got to somehow conform to federal civilized tribes. And that means we dominate you when you group together. That reminds me of in the Jim Crow era when you couldn't congregate as blacks. Same thing with the way they're working the Commerce Clause. They're basically saying we only dominate you when you're in a tribe through commerce. And then when they say regulate commerce, basically, again, they're changing the meaning of words like sovereignty. They change the meaning of regulate. They say in their system, regulate means supreme authority, supreme plenary authority over everything that an Indian can possibly dream of as being under their control. The Supreme Court, the Congress is saying, nope, we have the authority. So that's what regulate means to us. Meanwhile, in the same clause, they're saying they're also, quote unquote, regulating commerce with other nations and the states. But they're not doing it the way they do it with Indians, like we said before. Why, when it comes to Indians, are you saying that regulate means you dominate? You don't dominate China in commerce. You cooperate. You don't dominate. You're not cooperating with Indians. You're dominating them. And what they won't tell you, so we have to figure out who gave you the authority to just assume this domination and redefine words so that you are always in a dominant position. The doctrine of discovery did. The doctrine of discovery did. So I think we're going good, y'all. Let's move on. I think we want to let's look at the definition of sovereign. Okay, so this is the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the current version online. It starts out with sovereign as a noun, one possessing or held to possess supreme political power or sovereignty. Do any Indians in America have supreme political power? Political power? That would be a no. If you're under federal laws or federal quote unquote Indian laws, that means you do not have supreme political power. That means the federal has supreme political power over you, and they're calling it a plenary authority. So once again, the word sovereign is redefined. One of our legal arguments is, why does the federal government get to redefine words like sovereign and even regulate? Where's that coming from? Because we got to address that. We want the same, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We don't want a special revamped version of sovereign. We want what we're looking at right now. One that exercises supreme authority within a limited sphere. Well, what are our limitations, Indians? Again, all of the Americas is our sphere of authority, okay? All of this land was first ours, right? Okay, so who had it first? Indians. Who has supreme authority? Indians, right? Okay. An acknowledged leader. Yeah, well, they acknowledged that somewhat with the treaties. They acknowledged that we were leaders enough that they had to pretend that they treated with us. But those treaties, as we read one in one of these videos, all it did was say, stay your ass over there and don't come over here. Sign the treaty. In a nutshell, that's what the treaty was. You can hunt over there, but don't you dare come over here unless you dress a certain way. You gotta, so we know that it's you, so that if we need to attack that ass, we know that who we attacking. So in other words, if one of your Indians came to the part of your land that we said is ours, and he ain't dressed a certain way, he might wake up dead. Okay, that's what we read. I couldn't believe what I was reading, y'all. I simply could not. I said to myself, is this the kind of treaty they would have with Russia? What kind of treaty is this? And then some legal professional told me that they were bogus. All right, I'll take your word for it. Thank you. That's all I needed to know. They were bogus. Well, what was obvious, I think, or should have been obvious until I had a legal professional school me, and I'm glad she did. But the obvious thing that I missed was this was all duress. Now, I took some legal classes. While it was a while ago, I do remember that any contract that doesn't meet what they call their elements of a legitimate contract is void. In other words, if you have a contract where the person was like a gun was held to their head, which was basically the case with American Indians, then you can't say that we legitimately entered into a contract. You can't. But when you read the treaty, you realize, oh yeah, there must have been not a gun, a freaking cannon to whoever signed this head. Because this all this is saying is it's like when we read about the black codes, it said the black codes were about a limitation of rights, not a granting of rights. It was a limitation. Those treaties, oh my God, limitation written all over it. Don't do this, don't do that, don't go here, don't go there. Sign, please. Bang, bang. Court adjourned. Bang, bang. Another problem, and this I'm just going to throw it out there. It's not what we're talking about right now, but in a court situation, you know, first of all, if what I want to say is Indians don't have peers. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indians don't have peers. Now, I'm not saying we belong in their courts whatsoever, but I'm just saying, even if we did, where is the court of our peers? No, again, I'm not advocating, I do not say that this foreign system has jurisdiction over Indians who were there before this system existed. It's not possible, y'all. It's really so simple that I guess it's mind-boggling in some weird way because it's so simple. Who came first? Who was here first? Okay, that's their stuff. So how are they being overtaken by something that didn't exist when they were here? And then they just come up with some others. They just go all over the place trying to explain that. And none of it makes sense. But it does begin with the doctrine of discovery. That we have to really know. So to go to the root cause of a disease, you have to find out what caused the disease. You don't want to go to the symptoms. You want to go straight to the root cause. What is the root cause? The doctrine of discovery. So we as American Indians have to first present to a beast like this that the doctrine of discovery has been repudiated, okay? From that point, this house of cards must come down. We need to be compensated for past offenses, as well as giving back our land. Anything that was presumed to be a treaty, well, if we want something like that, they will all have to be redone because they were they were all under duress, y'all. In other words, if you were dealing with two true sovereigns, the treaties wouldn't look like the treaties between the United States and the Indians. They wouldn't have the same goal. You know what I'm saying? So the difference between, again, a treaty the United States might make with another European country versus the treaty they would make with an American Indian. With the other European country, they are free to engage in that treaty. There is no gun to their head. They're not being dominated by a foreign colonizing entity. That entity is recognizing their full sovereignty. When it comes to Indians, we have a gun to our head. In essence, we have the doctrine of discovery that is already compromising the way the colonizer looks at us. The colonizer is saying, basically, look, I will act like I'm engaging in a treaty with you. But look, I have the doctrine of discovery, and really I can take whatever I want without making any agreement with you. But I'm going to act nice today, and we're going to pretend that you're engaging in a treaty. And then they show the Indian a treaty. And, oh, so what's in it for me? I just told you what's in it for you. Oh, can I make any suggestions? No. I look at the treaty that I wrote, and that's what you got to agree to, because you're sovereign, but not really. See, we got to get rid of the not reallys that colonizer depends on, because those are excuses that no longer work. So again, the Indian signs a treaty. Stay your ass over there, and don't you dare come over here unless you put on some kind of costume so I can know it's you. And if I feel like I don't want you here today, boom, bang, bang, you're dead. So, okay, so we're just looking at the what sovereign really mean, because God know it ain't nothing that Indians got today, unless they start standing on that Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. It was a bone that was tossed at you, and then they quickly sought out to bury that bone. Indians have to resurrect that bone, and from there, we're going to say the Commerce Clause is in abject opposition to me being sovereign, yo. I have to control not some, let me get it right. I have to control my resources to be sovereign. Who was here when you got here? Okay, me? All right. Whose land is it that you're on? Although you're calling it yours, whose is it for real, for real? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, y'all. Yeah. Um, we have to at least have an idea of what the mission is at the very least, right? Now, colonizers are going to be kicking and screaming the whole entire time, coming up with whatever they can invent, pull out of a hat to somehow say that, wait, this is our land too. Ooh. The Pope said so. We don't have to go by that repudiation. Can somebody take the child out of this country, please? Would the parents please come and get your child, please? Or they can get legitimate and do business the real way. Compensation! And the compensation is going to be lovely, y'all. Like I always suggest, and I'm doing this in a peaceful, civil manner. Compensation. Well, how about everything that you normally charge me for is free? That would be very helpful. How about whenever I use your colonizer dollars until I create my own and make that the money of the land? How about I don't owe you anything when I use this dollar? Only your citizens, of which I am not as an American Indian, only your citizens need to support your government. I don't have to, because you're on my land. You're already supported. I'm just not compensated. We do this in a peaceful manner, y'all. I'm just trying to, that's why I lay this out. And we looking at dictionary, we quoting the Constitution. This is peaceful. This is what they call lawful, okay? Indians need compensation, and it involves their land, or I like to say Indians don't sell land permanently because that you're genociding yourself. So what you do is you rent out land to anyone who just has to be here. You rent it, and that rent is due for as long as you're here. That's the only way that would make sense because if people that are here already have land back home, wherever their home is, why should an American Indian give up something that is theirs for their children when you have something hidden away over yonder for your children? Why should we deny our progeny a place on their own land for you and sell it to you? No, we don't sell, we rent. And then when we're gone, our children collect the rent. It's an ongoing rent. The price is subject to change. The type of money is subject to change. The form of payment is subject to change. It is whatever the sovereign on the land wishes to have in compensation while you get to live your dream of just living on our land. I don't know why. Yeah, well, it was much more profitable when you had me under subjugation and all your little redefinitions and reclassifications to do it. And a God that I can only see as demonic if this is how he expects you to operate on earth. After I convert to you, I'm still being treated like a damn sinner when you said I'm saved. Saved from what? Oh, that's right. Living here on earth and a secure place in heaven while you live on my land forever and ever. Huh. Interesting. So the sovereign, okay, so any of various gold coins of the United Kingdom. So they had money that they called sovereign. They were so sovereign that their money was called sovereign at one point. At our expense, of course. Sovereignty at the expense of another sovereign is very interesting, isn't it? Did your God not supply you with enough? Are you greedy? Which one is it? Is it both? Superlative in quality. I would have to look that word up, but I just don't got no time. Of the most exalted kind. Supreme. So that's what are any Indians vibrating with these frequencies? That be no. Okay. That be no. Remember, citizen, a 14th Amendment citizen, not a state citizen. A 14th Amendment citizen per section 4 of the 14th Amendment. I say it all the time because you gotta grab it. You are bound to the United States public debt because per section 4 of the 14th Amendment, you cannot question the national or the public debt. When the bill is laid before you, the government is saying, you, my dear, better pay this. Don't ask me how the bill got so high. I said, and you agreed, as being you in love with your citizenship. It's a 14th Amendment citizenship. That is where the Indians enter into this system via the 14th Amendment. So it is the Indians that were misclassified black that are being told that they got to pay the debts of the foreign. Meanwhile, your land is your wealth, but you still got to pay a foreign entity. Don't got your land. You're only getting colonizing dollars, and they want you to give that to them as well. If we're not being, again, royally effed over, I don't know what effed over means. Look at your 14th Amendment, you Indians who just are just in love with your citizenship. It's a 14th Amendment citizen trust and belief. Anna was the one, Anna, that lady a lot of Indians despised. She was the one that was trying to get you to be the right citizen, since you love citizenship so much and Indians are not citizens. She was trying to get you to be a correct citizen as a state citizen. If you're so in love with states, you might as well be a state citizen and not a federal one, because a federal one is the district, as we keep saying. But the Indians that I know of, they were like, that Anna Von, she's crazy. Anna Von Wright don't know what she's talking about. Well, if you want to be a citizen, you better get with the brand of citizenship she pushing. Because as a 14th Amendment citizen, of which Anna is saying she is not, 14th Amendment citizen, they got to pay these debts. Oh, but then they can operate in private. That's the big solution for Indians, operating this corporation as a private. Is That's not a sovereign position. Again, that's something offered to foreigners as well. So Indians, you're supposed to have sovereignty, not compliance in this foreign system. You don't need to operate in private when you're the owner of all the land. You don't owe anybody as a sovereign. It's like, if the idea of being a private is to amass money, you can amass money and still be a slave. You got to catch that, y'all. How so? Because you're still being dominated by a foreigner. You going by his system and his little Ponzi schemes called private citizen. And when I tried to compare a state citizen to a citizen acting in private, I realized they're both very similar. They're both very similar. They're both, authenticating the birth certificate and claiming the straw man. The more adventurous ones are actually using accept for value as a means to, what do they call it? Uh, what do you call it when you it's a way of saying that you're offsetting your quote unquote bills. I forgot the word. Uh, yeah. So, in other words, you're directing the federal government to take the money from your straw man, not from me. Take it from the TDA account. You know, so you are. What's the word? Ooh, man. It's when you discharge. I'm sorry, you're discharging your debts. Indians don't have debts in a system that owes the Indian everything, okay? In their commercial system, they'll make it like you owe them. Meanwhile, they're using all your resources for free, and you can't figure out that you don't owe anything. Don't owe anything, and is owed everything that's on your land. Oh, it's just disgusting at this point. Having generalized curative powers. Uh, these are some of these words we gotta look up, y'all, but I don't think we're gonna take the time right now. Curative, okay? Power, okay. Well, we know we know one word that definitely not in the Rolodex of the American Indians file cabinets or whatever. Power? Oh no. Oh no. Civilized tribes don't have no power. Oh hell no. Again, Congress has plenary supreme authority over. What they're not saying is civilized tribes. The other uncivilized tribes are called black, and that's the end of that, okay? And so they fall under civil rights. Let me tell you, birthrights are a far different animal from civil rights. Remember, civil rights are only a portion of the Bill of Rights. So when the Indian enters as a black into this commercial Ponzi scheme of a system, they are put at the absolute ultimate disadvantage. You don't have all the Bill of Rights. You're under civil rights. You're not of a white status. You're the black status. So that means it comes with all the other shenanigans. It's you're at the bottom, of the entire scheme. Your rights are limited. That's the main one. You have to pay the public debt. That's for 14th Amendment citizens. Again, Negroes so-called enter at the 14th Amendment. That's how so you're under a whole other set of laws that Congress created, right? That's a far cry from being someone who creates their own laws, makes their own money, makes their own international agreements with other nations, and are respected as a sovereign. Whereas Indians now are, whatever our daddy do, we just have to go with it. If daddy supports a country that we don't support, oh well. If daddy wants to spend all our resources to save some other country, oh well. Daddy knows best. Wasn't that an old sitcom? Oh, father knows best. Yeah. Well, your father, the Pope, said the doctrine of discovery was a whole mistake. It's a misunderstanding. And your daddy knows best, repudiated the doctrine of discovery. March 30th, 2023. Get it. Find yourself. Find it. Unqualified nature. Your powers are of unqualified. You just got it like that as a American Indian. They said you're sovereign, right? Well, we looking at the definition of a sovereign. Now we got to remind them what sovereign means, because they think sovereign means I'm a subject. I do as told. They got it all twisted. They got it all effed up. Okay, having undisputed ascendancy. I kind of like, if I'm reading this correctly, let's keep it from there. I think we're not going to look up the words because we got to move. Because I'm already long winded. If I start looking up stuff, I'm listening. So these are words we might want to define in the comment section at some point. Ascendancy. I think what I'm hearing is that, like, I'm thinking that might mean that what you have goes naturally to your children. I think, they can ascend to your position. And this is just undisputed. But in commerce, they got all kinds. You got inheritance tax, about this tax. Indians are not taxed, and Congress just creates all kinds of new taxes for Indians who are now 14th Amendment citizens who can't question uh, the debt put on them first. State nationals and I guess privates, they can weasel their way out of that national debt. American Indians don't owe nobody. So how are we going to be responsible as 14th Amendment for the public debt? So we are paying you to be on our land? Is that what you're telling me? Oh, you got it all. You got it all effed up. Having undisputed ascendancy. Okay. Possessed of supreme power. They saying that's what you had, American Indians. Do you feel like you got that now? The answer, hell no. We ain't got nothing that looks like this, y'all. No move until we stand up and say, I'm sorry, the Commerce Clause can't take my sovereignty away, even though you twisted it up to mean it does. What it should have been is that you come to me for what the produce of my land, and I set the price of what I'm selling to the states as an American Indian who owns the land and who was the main farmers. I should have been setting the food standards, at the pricing, how I want. As a sovereign, I should have been paid, compensated in any way I wanted to be compensated. But once colonizers start making the dollars, all you gotta do is print that out. It don't cost him nothing. And it costs you everything because his dollars put you in debt. He spends it and you pay for it. That's how that works, yo. That's how the national debt goes sky high. And of the two parties, apparently it was the two foreign parties, two wings of the same bird. Out of the two wings, it seems that it was the Democrats that had the mission of jacking up the national debt so that the Republicans can act like, oh, what are you doing? I want to conserve. Well, together, y'all just stagnate everything. One wants to spend, one wants to conserve. So I guess there's some kind of weird medium going on that's not letting us go forward. And the debt is still sky high. So I guess the Democrats win. Ain't nobody trying to erase that debt, y'all. No matter what they say, that debt is still, but it needs to know, if anything, that's what you owe us. That national debt is owed to Indians, first and foremost. You on my land making all these shenanigans, and I ain't seen a dime. I ain't seen no compensation. I ain't seen no credit. Give me some credit at least. I think that's the best, though. I really do, because then you supersede all the drama of the money, because the money, it's the interest rates is high, the interest rates is low, it's in the depression, it's in the expansion. You know what? Just give me credit. I can't deal with all that foolishness that I know y'all are contriving and controlling. Just give me credit. Whatever it costs is paid for. How about that? That'll work for me. As a sovereign on the land who, like the queen did, I tell you how I want to be compensated. Give me credit, like the queen said. She said, take her credit. I'm saying, give me credit. That's what Anna informed us of, and she had no reason to lie. She did some deep diving, and that's what she came up with. Thank you. That just tells us a little bit more about how sovereigns are supposed to act. We don't have to settle for fiat, y'all. If we wanted gold, now some of us are in love with gold, whatever. I'm just right now, y'all. The way I see it, make land your first priority. Worry about all that stuff at a later date. It is the land that is your wealth. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what I believe the ancestors are trying to tell us. Get your land first and worry about your compensation later, because it doesn't have to be fiat dollars. Think bigger. If you got the bag, you decide. You're the decision maker. That's how it works. They came fair for your bag, but that's your bag, as they say. Then they're going to tell you owe them. That is, oh boy, this world must be upside down, y'all. It gots to be, because this is some foolishness. In the one that's called a free country? Huh? Oh my. Free to be frauded? And then it just makes, it gives us a bad name as the first people of this land. It just makes it look like it gets blamed on us, all these crazy shenanigans going on in our name. Well, on our landmass, I should say, because that is not our name. The United States is not our name. Hell, I'm not even sure America is, y'all. The way I see these people operate on this earth, I say it all the time. I can't wait to find out what we called America. It wasn't Turtle Island. That I know for sure. That was just the Iroquois, y'all. And again, that story about the turtle, it's leaving Earth, and it's trying to live on the back of an animal. Why would we do that? Why would we leave our land to live on a turtle's back? Well, that's when you're a compromised, foreign, Moorish influenced Indian, you'll come up with that kind of creation story. where you have to somehow the land is you were removed from the land. Why were you removed from the land, Morris? And now you want to be on a turtle back? Turtles stay mostly underwater, or are they always on the surface? How often do those sea turtles? Because if you live in on a turtle, it has to be a sea turtle, right? Because y'all don't really do land, right? Were you banished from the land, Moors, everywhere you went? Starting with being banished from the Americas. So you chose a turtle to live on. Why would you do that, though? Again, is it because everywhere you go, nobody really wants you once they find out about what you really all about? Birthright snatching, identity theft, insisting that you are one and the same people when you are from an entirely different continent. And every action shows that you never really had our back unless we identified as you. Right there, you're trying to get my identity to be yours. I can't be an American Indian by myself. The Moor has to say, but me too. Well, how are you North African, Berber, and American at the same time? Oh, you changed history. So your sovereignty allows you to just make up stories. You told the world you were North African Berbers, but then you want to recant on that and say, well, we was American and South African, North African Berbers. And again, look how they dog Africa. They don't want to be associated with the heart of Africa, the darkness. They don't want to be associated with the black part of Africa. They said, let's just stick up here with our lovely European offspring. We will not be identified as, we're not part of the rest of Africa. We're North African Berbers. So you don't even want to be part of the landmass you on, but you want to be all over America. You don't even want to claim all of Africa. How you fix your messed up, ugly face to want to own all of the Americas via American Indians, and you intermarrying with American Indians, and meanwhile American Indians, you just steamrolling over their story and talking about how you and them is from Mali. No, that's just you. And it's Mali in North Africa. We have to look that up, y'all. Let me look it up real quick. Now, I am going to take the time for that. I do want to see that one. I'm sorry. I'm looking up on my phone, though. Is Mali, I just want to see. Okay. Uh, is Mali a North African country? No. Their story is all, oh gosh. They are the most confusing bunch. So, although you're a North African Berber, Mali is not in North Africa. It's located in West Africa. It's a landlocked nation bordered by Algeria to the north and other West African countries to the east, south, and west. They don't even want to say the other thing. All right, oh boy. See, their story is a riddle checkered. Oh yeah, checkered. They're perfect, and they love checkerboard. Or that well, checkerboard, but they like to play chess on checkerboard. But they're the ones with this checkered past. They want to be everyone and everybody. That's the only way you can land grab an identity theft, y'all. You have to keep it sort of, open ended. We're from America, Africa, China. Blacks was everywhere on the earth. Yeah, but no one on earth goes by that. So why do you keep insisting on that? Can you go to China and tell them, "Oh, this is all black. This is a black man's country." Do you go to Russia and tell them, "This is a black man's country"? Because you only do that in America. I notice you don't really emphasize that in your children's country, your offspring country. Because you said you created all the other races, them your babies. How come you don't tell them that their country is your country too? Why? Why are you stealing our land, but you leave your babies alone? You want us off the face of the earth, but you just fine with your babies believing that they was there first. You don't really push that narrative, right? You don't come back and tell them that, oh no, you are more. You don't go to every other country and tell them that they're Moors, but you say that Moors was everywhere, but we just want America, all the Americas. We just want the Americas. So you want to displace me so you can find your footing on my land? You better miss me with that, y'all. You better miss us with that. Go back to Africa. Really, it's you that are, as I always say, it is always the Moors that came for American Indians. They first married in, got those Indians to change their entire origin story. Then they invited their offspring after they created a little cushion in the five civilized tribes and the Iroquois Confederacy, namely, that they created a little cushion. And then those nations slowly became Mongolian, and now they're virtually European, I do believe. I mean, it's like a mix of European and Mongolian at this point. So when the Moors come, what they leave in their wakes is a brand new face. And that's what they're hoping to do with American Indians. Once they come, notice their tribes are now Mongolian. They start that they claiming that they was the first yeah, okay. So then why are the tribes so Mongolian now? If you were the first. You weren't first. You mean you married into us and then you displaced us and then the tribes became Mongolian, all your preferred tribes. And the system basically is giving them all this lip service and all like they the only Indians that existed. They have compromised. First by the Moors, then by Mongolians entering and Europeans entering. By invitation of the Moors. That is really what's going on here. I'm sorry. So anyway, possess a supreme power, unlimited in extent. On our land, our power should be unlimited, right? We're not trying to do what colonizers do and come somebody else's land and say, "This is mine. Now be dead, pay dead," right? Enjoying autonomy. Oh Lord knows we ain't enjoying none of this, y'all. Life is riddled with fear of losing, fear of losing what you have, fear of prices being too high, fear of food that's compromised, fear of the whole black and white narrative, fear of the what do you call it? The police authorities, law enforcement, what are we enjoying about the way things are going on our land today, American Indians? Now we got, again, like I said before, I'm going to say the leaders of Africa. I want to make a distinction. I know it's not the average quote unquote citizen of Africa. It has to be the leaders of Africa that are coming up with these cockamamie ideas of that they deserve reparations and then have the nerve to call us their property. Oh, let me not go there. Let me not go there. And we're really gonna get off derailed. because I'm going to become unhinged again. Oh boy. I did a video before this one, and if I post this one, it would be redundant to post that one. But let's just say I kind of went overboard. I went overboard with it. But I do want to say in this video, most of all of this has to be directed at the leaders of Africa. So unfortunately, Africans kind of get caught in the crossfire, but really these Indian arrows should be more directed at the leaders that are coming up with these crazy ideas that we are their property. How dare you? How dare you fix your big lips to call us your property? You know damn well that we did not come from your country. Basically, it's the Moors that's running Africa. Come on, somebody talk about it. Isn't that a lot of Islam going on over there? So that's Moorish, right? And at the start, Moors were known to be North African Berbers. So really what they're saying is once they went south, they started dominating all of whoever was over there, right? Because they North African, baby. They are North African. They claim so much about how much they love black or it's all we all black people, okay, so they don't actually say black. They say they prefer the term more because more means black, but we just don't like to say black, but more means black. How convoluted. There we go again. Double talk. Fork tongue, fork tongue. So they are all about we all black or more, but you don't want to own the rest of Africa. You want to stay in the north. Why don't you go own your kinspeople before you actually don't come here. Actually, no. I was gonna say before you come talk about how much kinship you have over here, why don't you just keep it focused on your direct family over there first and last. First, middle, and last. Let's keep it all over there. How about that? So into American Indians, right? But you ain't into South Africa or Middle Africa. You North African is what you told the world because you want to be more associated with the lighter Moors. So funky and foul. So relating to characteristic of or befitting of a supreme ruler, royal. Okay. So there we have, okay, we did want to read this. Sovereign has everything to do with power. And any alleged or actual American Indian in America knows that that's the one thing you do not have, right? What you were supposed to as a sovereign, right? Sovereign has every. Now, I think some of the words were blocked, but I don't think it was. I think there was a heading here, but I couldn't get it, this block to move. So you can see it's just a heading up there. I forgot what it said. But the body is sovereign has everything to do with power. It often describes a person who has supreme power or authority, such as a king or a queen. God is described as sovereign in a number of Bible translations. In addition to describing ones who have power, the word sovereign also often describes what? The word sovereign also often describes power. To have sovereign power is to have absolute power. That is, power that cannot be checked by anyone or anything. What tribe in the Americas has that? So they're not sovereign, right? Right. And Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indian is a sovereign, not what they're calling tribes, but ultimately they're talking about only civilized tribes. So you become sovereign in their world only to be dominated by them in their world when you become a civilized tribe. Okay, so absolute power. To have sovereign power is to have absolute power. Ha! This is power that cannot be checked by anyone or anything. Nations and states are also sometimes described as sovereign. Sometimes, because there's a notion, I think, in the past that only the states were more sovereign. So they're trying to put it on a fictitious entity, that the fictitious entity is sovereign first. Not possible. It has to be a man or a woman, okay? That is first sovereign before any entity created by that sovereign man or woman can be known as sovereign. This means that they have power over themselves. Their government is under their own control rather than under the control of an outside authority. Sovereign can also be a synonym of supreme, as in of the most exalted kind. In that case, the power is figurative rather than literal. Okay, so some synonyms: ruler, monarch, main, foremost, principal, big, big, dominant, primary, predominant, chief. That's the one we went by, y'all. See, we had our own version of sovereignty, but now because we're so damn colonized, and these people really want to stay here forever. I mean, I don't understand why that is. The only thing that makes sense to me is if it is in fact a priesthood, which I am saying yes, it is. The priests don't want to account for what they have done to the ancestors of Americans. So the best way to not have to deal with that history, which is bloody, unjust, very bad behavior, they just don't want Americans here. So they want to come and take your land so that you can never tell your story. I just find it so funny that the pandemic hit in the midst of an awakening. And then I saw some of the people I know talking about not being able to remember. It's like this is the best time for your ancestral memory to come back. And yet, during this whole episode called pandemic, there are cases of memory issues. Interesting timing. Greatest, free, independent, sovereign, autonomous means not subject to the rule or control of another. Free stresses the complete absence of external rule, the full right to make all of one's own decisions. You're free to do as you like. Independent implies a standing. These are synonyms, I should have said, for sovereign. Implies a standing alone, applied to a state, applied to by a man or woman sovereign, who happens to be foreign, when in the case of America or the United States. It implies lack of connection with any other having power to interfere with its, they're calling citizens, laws or policies. Has that happened in America with American Indians? No, we have someone who's trying to be like a co-ruler, but also just a complete dominator. They're not honoring anything sovereign about American Indians, not one thing. Their hands are in every decision and anything that deals with American Indians. It's they're going to have to be sifted through colonizer. That is not sovereignty as everything we just looked at has defined sovereignty to mean. We don't have it, but we're supposed to, is the idea. That means when we stand up, we gotta think of this kind of authority because you're going to be told that you're not entitled to that level of sovereignty. We told you what sovereignty is. It's us having supreme authority over you, Indian tribes. I read in an article that we really should read that Indian tribes were given, some of them, many of them were paid to adopt constitutions similar to the United States. Why would a sovereign be asked to adopt constitutions that are similar to the United States? A sovereign doesn't have to do that, but we see that this entity is always grabbing jurisdiction. This can't go on, y'all. I'm so sorry. This can't go on. It's like we saw that movie, Beloved. Now that's an extreme case, but when you think about the level of domination that this foreign entity is always seeking, would you want your children to be born into that? Might you do what that character did in Beloved and just say, I'm just going to bash your head against the stone. I can't, I don't even want this for you. I don't want you to be here. I mean, when I see how profound this domination, foreign domination is to the point that it redefines sovereignty and thinks that's cool. But what they're doing really is using their sovereignty as if it supersedes yours. Why? Because of the doctrine of discovery. This is why all this is happening, y'all. Again, we got to go to the core. Where did it start? How did it start? What gave rise to this? How did that begin? Remember, Moors are those who promote the same religion that came here with this doctrine of discovery. So there's no way a Moor can really have the back of an American Indian because they co-sign on the very same religious systems that came here under the doctrine of discovery. There's no way a Moor could ever truly have an American's back unless they denounced the very type of religion that they are based on. Moors are based on a certain religion, y'all. That religion is the one that said that American Indians are heathen. When you try to figure out, well, what makes us different from Moors? They look like me. Yeah, well, their doctrine called you a sinner. And they were okay with sinners, quote unquote, being done away with. In their book, Yakub, Father of Mankind, they so cordially informed us that the race that they created and they knew was coming years before that race appeared on Earth, they said that race of people were meant to unalive 97% of who? American Negroes. This is in a Moorish book called Yahoo, Father of Mankind. I believe the page number is Secretariat 72. That's how they number their pages. Secretariat slash or dash 72. I believe that's the page. Don't quote me. I might be wrong, but that's what I'm recalling right now. Let me look. Maybe I got the book right here. Secretariat. Maybe we should read it. Oh, wait a minute. Oops, it's not Secretariat. Page 70. Wait. I gotta find it. I done gave some of this information on what page it is. Yeah, I know it's Secretarius. I'm sorry, it's Secretarius. Now we just gotta find the page because I think it's really important to know what is being basically co-signed on, right? Uh, Secretarius 81. I stand corrected, y'all. Pardon me. Yaku, Father of Mankind by Elijah Muhammad. Page Secretarius, just like it's spelled, Secretarius, I-U-S. It reads, as you have learned, they, meaning Caucasian people, were made to hate and kill off the black. They have killed on an average of 1 million to every 1,000 years that they have been on, quote unquote, our planet. That's 600 million people. And hope to carry 97% of the so-called Negroes here in America to their doom, and 2/3 of the entire black population on Earth. Maybe a thorough knowledge of their enemies will reduce this figure. Yeah, I know who you are, Moore. You're right. Knowledge of you will help us to understand why this even is written. Now, you got to understand also, in the same book, they saying their spiritual leaders knew that this man would be brought to earth. Okay, so what did y'all do to prevent that from happening, knowing that the mission was that 97% of so-called Negroes here in America were to be taken to their doom? Did you do anything to stop that? That be no, y'all. That be no. So that's what's taught in the halls of the Moorish world, at least the Moors in America, because that's who they coming for. Now the Arabs in the Middle East don't know nothing about this. I was schooled by a Arab brother, because he's more a brother than a Moor, than a black Moor. He said um, their people are related to Ishmael, and Ishmael was the firstborn, if you go by the Judeo-Christian story, of Isaac. I'm sorry, of Abraham. Oops. Sorry. So according to the Muslims in the Middle East, the Arabs, they're not really getting uh this Yaqub stuff, you know, because namely because Isaac, wait a minute. Yeah, it is Ishmael that they see themselves connected to. But you see, there is something different in the two versions of the story, you know, because I think the Moors in America are connected to Jacob, whereas Jacob is not in Ishmael's line. Jacob is a product of Isaac, but Ishmael is the firstborn. None of this has anything to do with American Indians, by the way. I'm just showing you how the Moors have different stories for different people. And in the Middle East, those Muslims are connecting themselves to Ishmael, while here, the Muslims are connecting themselves to Isaac by way of Jacob. If I'm even getting this correct, it's so confusing. I don't, but I just remember thinking to myself, wow, how refreshing it is to hear someone who's taught, I guess, the more accurate version of this whole thing because it made sense to me. So he's saying, according to his religion, Ishmael is a firstborn, you know? So that really put a whole new perspective in, how I viewed this whole thing. And I was very thankful. That was a taxi driver that I had one night. We ended up having a long conversation. But again, American Indians, they're not, we're not really, no, it's not really. It's, in fact, that's not our story. Remember, we were heathen, okay? We were heathen. So, do we want to go to another screenshot? Because I feel like I've been going long enough. I was going to look at the 1828 definition to compare to this one, because the 1828, it's just off the chain, y'all. You will see that they toned down the definition of sovereign. Because, okay, let's just take a quick look, because I don't think I can do it. In the 1828 version of the definition of sovereign, it's like land is really not even, they had very lofty ideas of a sovereign. I just thought it was interesting. But they going a supreme in power, possessing supreme dominion as sovereign ruler of the universe. So they were going, what's that cartoon? They were going master of the universe with it, y'all. And I just thought, okay, this is another tactic of a Moorish nature when you going off the allegedly off the whole planet to grab authority in space and all of this. It's like, okay, you're all dealing with the sea, you're dealing with space. What happened to your land, Moors? You don't want to talk about land, right? Supreme, superior to all others, chief. God is the sovereign good of all those who love and obey him. Oh, so now you gotta love him, then he's sovereign to all, whatever. Supremely efficacious, superior to all others, predominant, effectual as a sovereign remedy, supreme pertaining to the first magistrate of a nation as sovereign authority. It just seemed like they were just all over with it, you know. Supreme Lord, a ruler. Now, I don't think we saw a Lord. We just saw kings and queens. Okay. We did see kings and queens who possess the highest authority without control. Some earthly princes, kings, and emperors are sovereigns in their dominions. See, in their dominions. I think that's an important part. So here they start off with the adjective, and then the other one they start out with the noun. So maybe that's why. I don't know. So here they get to the noun, and it's a supreme lord or ruler, one who possesses the highest authority without control. Some earthly princes, kings, and emperors are sovereigns in their dominions. A supreme magistrate or a king, a gold coin of England, value 20s or 4.44. 20, 20 S, whatever the S stands. Pounds, I don't know. Or $4, I don't know. I don't know what that is. So let me not even go there. But anyway, I thought this was interesting, the 1828. And the 1828, we looked at this because, in case you don't know, 1828 is the edition of the dictionary that defined what an American is. So should we look at that? Let's see if we can look that up real quick. Uh, let's see. Uh, well, sir, 1828 dictionary. Uh-oh. I think I'm still sure. I didn't want to share my screen here, but I guess I am. Okay. So we look up American, and it should be that thing where they're talking about, yeah, a noun. Okay. Well, first it's pertaining to America. Are we sharing the screen? Yeah, we are. So I didn't want to go through all the searching, but we did it together. So let's continue. Uh, American, pertaining to America. American, the noun. A native of America originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now apply to the descendants of Europeans born in America. The name American must always exalt the pride of patriotism. That's what George Washington said. Not when the patriotism involves genocide, unfortunately, Mr. Washington. So there you have it. So often Indians like to go back to the 1828 dictionary to see what else was defined and how it was defined back then. Because here they are telling you what the Americans originally looked like, but they're telling you now that it's basically going to lighten up and Europeans are going to take our identity. That's what it's saying here behind all of, the noise. So America is the only place and the only definition of all definitions of other lands where a hijack is part of the definition. A birthright or identity theft is part of the original definition of American. But why would someone need to do that? Well, it's called genocide. Paper genocide, right here, actually. So if our national identity or landmass identity is going to be given to someone from another landmass, what's going to happen to us? We got to move out the way, right? We got to become black, Negro, colored, right? And what's making this happen? The doctrine of discovery, which has been repudiated. Repudiated. Let's put a D in there. Okay, so there we have it. We looked that up. So that's what the original American was. Used to be colored folk, well, what so-called colored folk. Now they're trying to tell us now it's white folk. But the Negropeans are slipping in there as well. See, they're not going to tell you that them first Europeans was all Negroes, right? But they want you to feel or get an understanding that it's Europeans. No, it's first the Negropeans that's taking our place. The first Europeans were Negropean. Are we clear? Are we all aware of what Benjamin Franklin, how he described Europeans being swarthy, right? Okay, so the first Europeans were what? Negro, African, Negropean. And now they want to say that they're us. This was part of that hijack, the definition that you're looking at. So who's your real enemy, American Indian? It can only be the one that can take your place because they look like you. It really can only be that. We'll always be able to tell a Caucasian European apart from us, right? But the one that's going to slip in slimy and grimy, that's going to be the Negropean, y'all. And it happened with the civilized tribes. They married into the civilized tribes, y'all. And then they gave the civilized tribes a whole foreign narrative that included an origin in Mali. Now, Mali is a younger civilization than America. Get the book, Horace Butler, Horace Butler book, When Rocks Cry Out. He's trying to tell you in his own convoluted way that America is an older civilization than anything in Africa. And we did the timeline, right? Okay, let me see. So now I'm going to stop this shit. Let me see. I stopped the share, right? Wait a minute. Did I? Yeah, this time I did. Okay. let's see if I can pull up my timeline. Timeline. Okay, I guess we can go with this one. Let's see. Do I want, let's see. Okay. So in my video, America is an older civilization than Africa. We read well, we based our premise on Horace Butler's book When Rocks Cry Out, because what he's doing, he's adding more time to America, but he's still trying to give the credit to Africa. So reading the book When Rocks Cry Out led us to look and see, with the new time frame given to the Americas, brings us to 3400 BC. When you put the first Egypt back in the Americas, like Horace Butler is telling us to. Now you have to see what Africa is left with. When you remove Egypt from Africa to where it first began, it puts America in the first civilization seat. So then you have to deal with Punt, because scripture is somehow creating Punt out of Somalia. We figured out that they no longer know where Punt is, but Punt in the Bible is an African country that has a date of about 2500 BC. So they come after the first Egypt in the Americas. Now, we didn't call it Egypt. Horace Butler says we called it Tameri. So when you put America in its proper place, it's older than anything in Africa. But look where Mali starts. 1300 AD. That is way younger than 3400 BCE. So you got the Moors saying that we originated, or our ancestors are from Mali. That's not possible. Mali didn't exist when my ancestors walked this America. So the Moors are once again weaving up some lies for American Indians to eat it up. Yum, 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 right? Yummy, 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 right? Not so good for your tummy, though. So we just want to be clear where Mali begins, okay, and where America begins. My ancestors go back to 3400 BCE. Now, Narmer may have been the first version of a Moor. I will have to say that. But what Horace Butler is telling us, if you go to, oh gosh, do I have his book nearby? Okay, we have Horace Butler's book nearby. So let's look at the page that you can look up in When Rocks Cry Out. So he says, ancient writings include, this is page 17 of When Rocks Cry Out, chapter 3, page 17. Ancient writings, including an autobiography left by, now he says Moses, but we're going to apply, let's just say, more documented characters. And we're going to say he must be referring to Tutmosis or Ahmose. Okay? Explained that a civil war in Central and South America had forced the Egyptians. Okay, so wait a minute. Egyptians in Central and South America? Is that what you're telling us, Horace Butler? Okay, we got it. All right. So you're saying the first thing known as Egypt was in Central and South America. Okay. So again, ancient writings, page 17. Horse butlers, when rocks cry out, storm over Egypt. Now we must understand that Horse Butler is more or less Judeo-Christian, so he's going to have that bias. But we know that the original Americans were actually heathen, right? That's what the Moors had the world see us as. And they also told the world that we were a new world when they knew that we go back to 3400 BCE. But see, what the Moors are doing us is supplanting us. They creating a younger group of people, and their job now is to deny that American Indians ever existed before their people existed. So they want a people that they can dominate carte blanche due to the Moors preceding those people, the new people. You see, there's a problem though, because we Americans are just as old as the Moors. So we have to be removed so that the Moors can create a new narrative, a new world order, a one world government, a new this, a new that, new. So they want to make everything new, but they want to forget and erase the firstborn, y'all. They were like they were, I want to say, we share a timeline with the Moors. We're just as old as they are, but we don't share the same ideology. And it is an ideology that came to the Americas to wipe out Americans. Why? Because we disagreed with that ideology. So the way Horace Butler says it, he says, Tutmosis are our Moses. You're going to try to stick with, historical characters. Explained that a civil war in Central and South America had forced the Egyptians to flee from the Americas. They escaped to the east side of Africa, where they built a second Egypt. Okay. I think we're going to leave it there. He does go into explaining Heru and then Peru, meaning that the country known as Peru is basically named after an ancient Egyptian deity known as Heru. And the reason why I took that name on, someone in the comments asked, why am I using a quote unquote African deity? Well, I think I just explained to you, but I'll say it again. That deity originated in the Americas, namely in Peru. Peru. Per, house of Peru. Peru was known as the house of Heru. That's what Peru means. It's a conjunction of the two words per and Heru. Now, as of late, I found, to my shock and awe, that they're trying to associate Heru with Hathor, because they want to get us off the trail, y'all. So they done took symbolism that used to represent Heru, and they're trying to say, nope, when you see that hawk, it could be Hathor. Now, Hathor, for those are into these symbols, we know that she, or Het Heru, her name was Het Heru, but she is not the same deity as Heru, who was a distinct deity. Heru is a male, Het Heru is a female. But her symbolism, for those who know, I'm just reiterating, but for those who don't know, she is represented with cow horns, often with a sun disk in the middle of the cow horns. She was never represented as a hawk like Heru, the male deity, is. A falcon, I should say. But I think, originally I believe it was a falcon, because there's a certain falcon that has that eye design that looks like a teardrop. A certain falcon has that design, not a hawk. from what I understand, and not an eagle. So Heru was based on a falcon. Okay, so we went a little bit off topic. Gonna take a quick pause, I think. Are we sharing our screen? Uh, Let me see. I hope I was sharing my screen. Oh man, I wasn't sharing my screen. Okay. Um, I wasn't sharing my screen, so I guess you didn't see this. Don't tell me I messed up again. I messed up. Okay, so this is the screenshot I thought I was showing, but I'm not sure now. Uh, where the timeline. Now, everything I just said, just look at the timeline. Mali is 1300 AD when it first appears on Earth. America has been, when you put Egypt in its proper place in America, it's 3400 BC. So I say this to say once again, American Indians could not have originated in Mali because Mali did not exist when Americans were here in the Americas. We did not originate in Mali. What you have is a Moor placing his timeline on your history, American Indians, particularly the civilized tribes, because you're the ones that's being told that you have an origin in Mali. It's not possible. You predate Mali by centuries. The Moor is creating, as we said, new things. So he wants to orient you toward the new things and have you genocide your ancestors that go all the way back here. See? I'm sorry. I thought I was showing this to you, but apparently I got a little carried away. But anyway, um, so I hope you see it now. So sorry. So sorry. So we are going to actually stop our share once again because I have to take up a short break and I shall return back. Um, so I'm thinking we've gone pretty long. I'm kind of not happy that I didn't have my screen here showing, but hey, it happens. Uh, so I think we did go over the questions to uh, uh questions we had. Um, did okay, okay. So yeah, so there's the screenshot of the once again the African nations compared to Horace Butler's research, which informed him where the first civilization began, giving the Americas an older time frame. Some people will have a problem with this. Some people will say, ah, now it all makes sense. The whole psyop of America now makes sense. Uh, if you were to ask me, I think the priesthood that is running the Roman Catholic Church and saw fit to draft up a doctrine of discovery so that they can get some kind of, I don't know, vengeance on American Indians, and at the same time, uh, you know, have access to our resources, do what they need to do to mess with any artifacts that would be contrary to the narrative that the Americas are the first civilization, then Africa, and then the others, but that conflicts with the idea that we are heathen, you see? And that's what the priesthood was promoting, that we are heathen. They don't want to say that all the spirituality began in the Americas. So let's just say they were heathen and come back and proceed to freak these Negroes over till the end of time if we had our way, or until we finally got rid of them as we planned to in our little Yakub Father of Man playbook that we read from earlier, where 97% of American Negroes were be brought to their demise. Why? Why would that be necessary? So that the Moors can complete their lies and have no objections, no challenge to their lives. And why are they doing this? I just think it's something in the way that uh it's the way I see it, and I know I'm going to that slippery, slidey slope. When you are trying to pass on your own sins to someone else through a sacrificial system, I have to say it because it just becomes so clear to me. When you have a substitute type of religion, you have to have a substitute to bear the consequences for what you did, number one. And you're going to need a dumbed down people who blindly adhere to this weird bloodletting sort of sacrificial system that is basically saying the only way for your heavenly quote unquote father to forgive you is somebody is put to death. What they're really doing is they're providing their deity a blood sacrifice for their own sins, the priesthood sins. You see what they call sins. Because you see, when they went about to create these other races that they tell us about, they had to, shall we say, what they would say, break the laws of quote unquote nature, right? They needed to have another group of people again to lay blame on for something they are doing, which is namely, how do we get rid of those American Negroes that we don't want them finding, they freaking that time comes when they start getting downloads from their ancestors and they start knowing who they are. Oh God, that's gonna fuck us all the way up. Because we tried to tell the world that America is a new place. And they're gonna wake up and find out that their home was here before we started talking about these brand new people and these brand new deities. So the priesthood, they trying to escape their own karma by creating a sacrificial system. So instead of them paying for their sins, they have American Indians to do that for them. Okay? And then they ritualize you. I guess the idea, I don't know, there's something up with drinking blood, even ritualistically, and eating flesh ritualistically. Now, we got called heathens. I always say this, but sometimes you're on a roll, but like every time, basically. So we were heathens. They said we were eating other Indians in cannibalism. But their solution is a religion where they're eating the body of and drinking the blood of some dude they done killed, right? Okay, so they're setting the stage for us to be sort of co-signers on this type of spirituality. I, there's something in my spirit that says if the creator of the universe is about life, why is he suddenly, or he or she suddenly, about death to sustain life? It really doesn't make sense. No, you're talking about a sacrificial system, and you need that because you're going to make someone else pay. And the deity that you chose of the other deities is one that says, well, just give me some blood and I'll do what I can for you. Do I just, I, I just have, I'm like a vampire and whatnot, and a cannibal or whatever. So how about you? Well, the deity itself is about the blood. The cannibalism is, I think, when the priests have to now eat the thing that they sacrifice because actually they want the power of that thing, right? So this whole thing is vampirism, cannibalistic sort of spirituality, and it just goes completely under the radar because it's been so very ritualized, like but at the end of the day you're saying you're consecrating something to be a body, so you're eating somebody. That's cannibalism, isn't it? Oh no, when you do it, it's, oh, okay, I see. When you do it, certain folk, it's not cannibal, but when someone else does it, that's the worst thing in the world, but you replicating the worst thing in the world. So who's the wiser here? And that, I'm not saying that to say that that's actually what Indians practice. Not at all. I believe that's a whole lie. How do you go from being the first civilization to, oh, we're the cannibals over here? No, no, no. Uh, I seriously doubt that we practiced that when we were basically the ones who where civilization sprung up and spread out. Okay, so I have a feeling I want to end here because I feel like it's going to be too long of a video. What I might want to look at though, okay, all of a sudden now I can't access my screenshots. All of a sudden I can't access my screenshots. Okay, so that means I gotta open them. Hey, that's all. Let's see. Is that the one I want? Yeah. Okay, so first we want to talk a little bit about these doctrines of the papal bulls that are the doctrine of discovery. That what gave this legal system the right to dominate us and while calling us sovereign. So here's an explanation. The question was the doctrine of discovery repudiated? Okay, and then the explanation was this was and we did a quick AI. So here we go. Pope Nicholas V issued the bulls Dum Diversis in 1452 and Romanus Pontifex in 1455. Dum Diversis authorized King Alfonso V of Portugal to enslave and take the land of non-Christians. What were Americans? We were non-Christian. Romanus Pontifex expanded Portugal's authority to conquer non-Christian lands. And at that time, really, they were eyeing the Americans. Okay, so that's one of the bulls. That was Dum Diversis. Okay. Pope Alexander, I'm sorry, again, that was in 1452 and 1455. Okay. In 1493, Pope Alexander VI issued a bull Inter Cetera in 1493. This bull gave Spain the exclusive right to claim and trade inlet trade. When you can claim something, you don't have to trade, okay? We never had commerce over here, y'all. We had grand theft, okay? This bull gave Spain the exclusive right, exclusive. The Moors were in Spain, right? So the Moors had exclusive right, somebody talk about it, to exclaim, I'm sorry, to claim and trade. Oh, let's stop. Let's stop the BS. Let's read this as it should be written. This bull gave Spanish Moors the exclusive right to claim lands west of the demarcation line and to approach those lands without needing special permission. So, were treaties necessary, as we always ask? No, treaties were just the flim flam, y'all. Basically, the treaties are just reiterating the doctrine of discovery. We have the right to take all your land, and for now, we're going to put you over there until further notice. That's the treaty, y'all. That's the basic treaty. At least that's the Powhatan Treaty. And those Powhatans are the Indians that are considered defeated, right? So then they become the ones that, quote unquote, owe. In the European or Afro-European laws of war, the loser has to pay for the war, right? So after Algonquins lose, is that how they became indentures by and large? How the Iroquois going to be in a position of indenture when they help the damn colonizer, y'all? No. Again, they were the slave masters of the Indians who lost the war, the Beaver Wars. So that gave colonizer an excuse to completely ignore that it was Algonquins that first treated them with absolute kindness, only to be called or seen as heathen, so that the colonizer could ignore all that kindness and side with what were always known as the enemy to the Algonquin, which is the Iroquois. And whoever the Iroquois gathered around them for a little cushion. Okay, so the Muscovian tribes, right? So all these other tribes are gathering around the most warring Indians in the eastern woodland areas, which were the Iroquois. It's so like such a irony that they would draft the Great Law of Peace when they did not live by peace when it came to their worst enemy, according to the way history is accounted with. Why were the Algonquins the enemies of the Iroquois? Because at that point, the Iroquois were basically Moors, y'all. Come on, somebody. Talk about it. Okay, so there's the bulls that allowed this whole system to be here and dominate us in all their alleged laws, that break all their laws when it comes to us, break all their treaties when it comes to us, say that they're giving us something and it ends up being for everybody and it's not really exclusively for us. This is why the talk of reparations is so stagnated, because you got to tell the truth before you really deal with reparations. And because we're living on such hearsay and lies about quote unquote slavery, you can't really have a clear cut conversation on reparations, because what you're going to find is that the reparations would be all Indians getting all of their land back. End of story. All Indians having what we read about what sovereignty is, having sovereignty over all their lands. Colonizer would, it seems like they'll lose their mind if they lose our land, y'all. But they need to find themselves, y'all. You find yourself, anime, find yourself, and go on back home to do it. You said you originated in North Africa, and that's the cradle of your civilization. Take your ass on back there, please. Take your ass right on back there. Find yourself. The self you chose to be is African. Moors, go be your best self in Africa where you belong. Clearly, you don't get along with us. It's not us who don't get along with you. Once you married into our family, yeah, there you go. You got people getting along with you. But then you're encouraging them to just discard all of the rest of the Indians, right? You're not coming here as a unifying factor. You're coming here as a divide and conquer factor. Or once you find yourself. The Vatican formally repudiated the doctrine of discovery on March 30th, 2023. The Vatican stated that the doctrine is not part of Catholic teaching. What does that mean, y'all? This system got to go. This domination system got to go. It got to go back to real, what they refer to as commerce. We got something you want. You got to compensate for it, baby. We gotta. First of all, we gotta be willing to give it to you, and then we gonna need some compensation. It's no longer just take. But again, does this system know anything about jubilees? This doctrine being repudiated, it ended the need for a jubilee. What we need is our land back, not for 50 years, forever. Jubilees are every 50 years and then it's back to the BS. No, that's not going to work for us. So, yeah, the Jubilee is a nice idea, but unfortunately, they don't go by that, or else we'd have our land. What? It's been 200 years now? How many Jubilees have taken place in 200 years? Every 50 years, there's a Jubilee. 4 into 200, is it at 40? Is it? Okay, let's do the math. You know I need my calculator, even for simple math. Come on now. Okay. So let's break out the calculator to find out what's going on here. We want to be clear. Where's the calculator at? You know, when you have all kinds of icons on your phone, you can't tell which one is the calculator. 200 years, over 200, but we just go with 200. Divided, okay, let me see. I think, oh, it's only 4. Oops, okay. 4 times 50. Let's do it again. Okay. Times 50. Okay. At least 4 times we had jubilees and should have got our land back. What happened? What happened is they don't go by jubilees. That's what happened. We're never going to get our land back if it was left to them and their jubilees, okay? That's why you don't want to be part of a system that doesn't go by its own, what they saying, the laws of what they God said to do. These Moors ain't doing that, okay? So, yeah, at this point, I believe it's over 200 years. So we might be able to slip in a five times that colonizer had a jubilee in 200 years, over 200 years, 4 to 5 chances to get our land back. And we never did. What did we get, Indians? Do you remember what we got? We got more misclassifications. Black, Negro, colored. So I guess every time the Jubilee came, they just renamed us. If there's no Indians, we can't have a Jubilee. They black now. So let's wait till another 500 years, maybe the Indians show up. Oops! Oh, now they're colored. So whatever we took from the blacks, and they're gone now, and now they're colored, right? Okay, let's wait another 50 years, see what happens with the Jubilee next one. Come on. Okay, 50 years go by. Oh, stay African American now. Okay, so there ain't no Jubilee for nobody because all the people that we got to give shit back to, they gone. Their identity changed. See how that worked? We are not We cannot depend on a Jubilee, y'all. But again, the repudiation does not have a time limit. The Pope did not say, I'm repudiating the doctrine of discovery for the next 50 years. This is permanent, y'all. There's no time frame on this. So now that we looked at, I guess we got to look at the repudiation. This is the official document, the Bollettino, the papal bull, y'all, of Thursday, March 30th, 2023. This can be found on the Vatican website, y'all. Now, I forgot how to navigate to it, but it's there. I think you got to go to modus proprios and then go from there, I believe. I'm sorry, I used to know how to get there. But I want to cut to the chase, to the part where it is speaking more candidly about what's going on here. And that's at section 7 and 8. In no uncertain terms, the church's magisterium upholds the respect due to every human being. The Catholic Church therefore repudiates those concepts that fail to recognize the inherent human rights of indigenous people, including what has become known as the legal and political doctrine of discovery. So the doctrine of discovery was applied to Indians, right? Don't worry, the Pope does mention the word Indian. And it was important that he do that because he was talking about human beings, right? And human rights, right? So let's read 8. Numerous and repeated statements by the church and the popes uphold the rights of indigenous peoples. For example, this is an example. So now he's saying in 1537, we did uphold the rights of Indians, basically, because now the wording changes to Indian. So in the 1537 bull Sublimis Deus, Pope Paul III wrote, we define and declare that the said Indians, okay, the said Indians, those are the Americans, y'all. Those are the Americans. India didn't exist as a nation until 1947. So he's not talking about India. From what I read, apparently India wasn't even discovered. Vasco da Gama discovered India in 14, I believe they have him as 1490. It was after Columbus discovered America, y'all. Let's look it up quick now that we done brought it up, because we just want to solidify who was referred to as the Indians. When did the first European discover India? Literally. Now they're going to say the Greeks did, but there's no real solid thing. It's just hearsay from Herodotus. In other words, Herodotus is repeating something he heard, but not something he's seen. Okay. Although on other occasions he was pretty good, in this instance he relied on hearsay. The Greeks never saw India, y'all, but Herodotus is basing his assessment of India on something he heard, y'all, not something he saw secondhand, y'all. So when did Vasco da Gama let's say, okay, they got reach India. Okay. Let's see what they say. Okay. Vasco da Gama reached India, and it wasn't called India when he reached it, y'all, in 1498. So when did Columbus come to the Americas? That was 1492. 6 years later, the first European, now, got to remember, Columbus is the first European, right, to come to the Americas. The first European to go to India was Vasco da Gama. Columbus came here in 1492, 1493. Vasco da Gama discovered what they are now calling India after the fact of discovering the West Indies. Vasco da Gama reached India, what is now called India. It wasn't called India back then. May 20th, 1498. Again, that is 5 to 6 years after Columbus came to South America and the West Indies. He didn't even come to North America, y'all. We say that all the time. He landed near the city of Calicut on Malabar coast, present-day Kerala. This voyage established a direct. See what you'll find with Vasco da Gama. There's bullshit and everything, y'all. They insist. They always try to insist that he reached India by sea. They always, when you look this up, it's always the word sea somewhere. So what they're trying to imply is that somehow Europeans got to India, what they call India, by land, right? Because I asked myself, why do they keep saying he's the first European that got there by sea? So then I Googled, who's the first European that got to India on land? Baby, he don't exist. Excuse me. What? Say what now? You keep saying he was the first European to reach what you are calling India by sea. Okay, thank you for that information. Can you tell me which European discovered India by land, since you keep insisting on sea? What I found was Vasco da Gama comes back up again. So it's like I went into I got caught in some kind of weird Ferris Bueller day off situation, y'all. I got caught in a glitch, y'all. I like, it's like that's the time when you want to take Google and slap upside the head, okay? I didn't ask you who got there by sea. I just asked you who got to who of your European peoples got to India by land, baby. And then they're going to say, no, it wasn't one of us Greeks. But who came before the Greeks? If the Greeks didn't find, if the Greek in the order of history, is it the Greeks that said? I don't want to go. It's just complicated. But they're laying this on Herodotus because they don't have anybody else they can lay this on. So that's European. So it's like they got a European quote unquote scholar that has to go by word of mouth by I guess what they're saying were Persians. Uh but okay. I just gotta do this. I just want to see now what in the order of history it was. I knew it to be Egypt and Africa. First to Egypt and America, but then by the time Egypt goes to Africa, the next thing that gets civilized are the Greeks, right? That's what I used to be told. So we want to say who came first, Greeks or Persians? That this might not be the answer I'm looking for, but we just for shits and giggles. All right, so they're saying the Persian Empire. Okay. Okay. All righty. Okay, so I guess that would be like Babylonia before Greece, right? Now, I don't believe that's what they used to say, but whatever. I don't recall. It's all too confused, too convoluted. Uh, why do Greeks have much information about Persia history? Oh, okay. Why do Greeks have much information about Persian history, but Iranians don't know anything about Greece and Hellenic history? That's another rabbit hole we're not going to go down. That's a question in Quora. Somebody wondering why Iranians don't know anything about Greek history. Okay, that's a whole other rabbit hole. I don't know. But we're not gonna do it today. But Herodotus is saying that his knowledge of India is based on what's there there's two names that come up, and I think he's saying they were Persian. But the point is, I think the point, it is the point. Europeans were not the first to know India, but when they do, it's after Columbus discovers America. 5 to 6 years after Columbus arrives in the Americas, 5 to 6 years later, a European first discovers India, but they got so much to say about it. That's what I want to say. Europe's got so much to say about India. But what they don't say is that we didn't even know they existed when Columbus discovered America. So there's no possible way that we really could um, verify, you know, that anything about people that lived in India. We Europeans, they only named Vasco da Gama. From there, it's hearsay about some other explorers. But yet, Europe is the one that's doing the most mouthing for all that India is and what it should be and what they want it to be named. Yet you weren't even there when Columbus got here, yo. The first European to reach India, and they get to see, but when you ask them who did it by land, then the stories begin, y'all. Let the games begin. You insist on this man reaching India by sea, but you don't have any European reaching India by land, according to your narrative. It's just little things, y'all. Um, so numerous unrepeated statements by the church and the popes uphold the rights of indigenous peoples. For example, in 1537, in the 1537 bull, Sublimis Deus, Pope Paul III wrote, "We define and declare that the said Indians and all other people," they're talking about Americans, that was the whole point of going into a conversation about India. Um, yeah, I guess 1537 is after 1498, but it's still, you know, the first Indians known by Europeans were the American ones. And then Vasco da Gama discovered India, what they are calling India. Back when Vasco da Gama discovered it, it wasn't called India, y'all. Again, it wasn't called India until 1947, officially known as India. Before that, it was either Bharat or Hindustan. And another thing, they keep insisting that all this is based on a river called the Indus River. But the Indus River was first called the Sindus River. But they're trying to make it somewhat where it can be somewhat similar to they're trying to get India out of Sindhu. But to me, Sindhu is more closely related to Hindu. You see what I'm saying? So, but they, I believe the British colonizers They're really trying to promote the idea that somehow India was known as India before America was known as having Indians. Okay. Okay, let's get this out. And I think we're going to close for now because, it's a long video. We don't want it too long. We define and declare that the said Indians of America, but all other people who may later be discovered by Christians, are by no means to be deprived of their liberty or possession of their property, even though they be outside the Christian faith. See, before if you wasn't a Christian, they was going to either unalive you or torture you till you became a Christian, etc., etc. And then you still never got your land back. But anyway, and that they may and should freely and legitimately enjoy their liberty and possession of their property. Possession of their property. Nor should they be in any way enslaved, in any way. So, if you're using liberty as a word when freedom would be better, the fact that we should not be enslaved means that we are free. We're not being liberated. Well, I guess in a way we are because they made us like as if we're slaves. But originally, this whole video was about sovereignty and what we were before colonization. That's what we got to get back to. Should the contrary happen, in other words, if there's anything preventing an American Indian from freely, that means without paying, y'all, and we are Indians, not taxed after all, right? We shouldn't have been paying anyway to live on our land, point blank, period. Freely, that means we don't have to pay, y'all. And legitimately, that means not paying is going to be legitimate for Indians, American so-called Indians. Enjoy our freedoms, because after we liberated from this foreign imposed slavery, I guess it would be liberty, but liberated back to our sovereignty. I guess we can look at it that way, right? And possession of their we call it our ancestral land. See, property, we kind of want to move away from that because that's a term in commerce. But we were here before commerce existed on this land. Well, the brand of they call it commerce, so it's their shit. We might have called it trade. I don't know. But anyway, we want to be able to call our land what we want to call it, not what some commercial entity calls it. The commercial entity calls it property, but we call it our ancestral land. So we want possession of our ancestral land, nor should they be in any way enslaved. That means debt slavery, indentured turn slavery. The Pope just put an end to slavery, y'all. And yet we still have it going on here in debt slavery. But he said in any way enslaved. If a fictitious debt is enslaving me, that has to be voided, or the word they chose is null. Should the contrary happen, and we are paying, or we are being enslaved, or our property is not in our possession, our ancestral land's not in possession, if that happens, it shall be null and have no effect. I'm telling you, the Pope has pretty effectively shut it down. But you can't get this beast to understand. They're going to act stupid, right? I literally sent this document to the folks I'm dealing with, y'all. And I highlighted it, just as you see page. We may have to, and I'll make the suggestion and then we'll close for now. We may need to consider a petition of all Indians who agree that we have been given our sovereignty back by the same entity that took it away from us. So it is over. Game over. But see, we have to call this up. Colonizer, if we don't call it, oh, that means I do need to show you one more thing about how we have to call up our sovereignty. It happens in one of the John Marshall cases. This is the Cherokee Nation versus the state of Georgia, as you see, from 1831. Okay. So here, Judge Marshall, he says a little something, right? Let's read it. Guided by these principles, I come to consider the third clause of the second of the first article. He's talking about Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, that speaks about sovereign Indians, right? Guided by his colonizer principles, is basically what he's saying. I have come to consider the third clause of the look at how you got to say it, yo. Just say Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, please. Of the Constitution, which provides for the apportionment of representatives and direct taxes among the several states which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers, excluding Indians not taxed. This clause embraces not only the old, but the new states to be formed out of the territory. You see, those states started out as territories. Outside of the 13 states, those were actually legitimate states in terms of they started out with state citizens and state laws. The other states started out as territories, y'all, meaning they were slaves from the beginning. They were property of the District of Columbia, y'all. So this whole thing is so janky, man. So this clause embraces not only the old, but the new states to be formed out of the territory. They use what they call manifest destiny to grab all the land that was not part of the constitutional agreement. When you pull up that constitution, it literally names the 13 states. At the bottom somewhere, it names the states that are party to the Constitution, the federal Constitution. What the federal government did was said, that's not enough for us. We have manifest destiny. Where did that come from? Where did manifest destiny come from? The doctrine of discovery, because it's not in the Constitution, y'all. Nowhere in the Constitution is it really saying that Congress has the power to just go and take the rest of Indian land, okay? They made it up because they use that's how they use their sovereignty, y'all. Meanwhile, they're squashing ours, right? We are peaceful, loving Indians. We don't advocate violence, y'all. But when we grab hold of what's the shenanigans going on, we're going to scream it from the rooftops. Loud, obnoxiously, irreverently, insanity-ly. Like we done lost our mind. So this is one of those cases, right, that they say gave the federal government plenary authority over all Indians. These are one of the foundational, the three cases of the John Marshall trilogy where the federal just basically told the Indians where to go, how to get there, and who's in charge, who's really in charge. And that's the federal government, y'all. This clause embraces not only the old, but the new states to be formed out of the territory of the United States. Pursuant to the resolutions and ordinances of the old Congress and the conditions of the secession from the states, or which might arise by the division of the old. Oh God, I don't know what the hell this man saying, y'all, but it gets we get to the part, right? If the clause excluding Indians not taxed had not been inserted, they would have dominated our asses even more. Or should be stricken out, the whole free Indian population of all the states would be included in the federal numbers. See, what he's saying is Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indians are not included in the federal, right? He just said it, y'all. Now, this is one of the cases. This is something we have to keep in our arsenal when we go to stand up as Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indians. And what we're saying is not only is your doctrine of discovery repudiated, but even in your foundational cases where you mocked the floor with our sovereignty and just made it like it don't exist no more. This judge is saying if the clause excluding Indians not taxed had not been inserted, the whole free Indian population of all the states would be included in the federal numbers co-extensively with the boundaries of all the states included in this union. The insertion of this clause conveys a clear, definite declaration that there were no independent sovereign nations or states, foreign or domestic, within their boundaries, which should exclude them from federal enumeration or any bodies of community within the states, excluded from the action of the federal constitution. Now, here's the part we want to focus on. Unless by the use of express words of exclusion. What I'm reading that to mean is that you have to say or claim that you're an Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indian. That's what I got. But let's read it again. If the clause excluding Indians not taxed had not been inserted, or if it was stricken out, the whole free Indian population of all states would be included in federal numbers. Right there, Indians not taxed are different from Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 Indian tribes. You see, the judge knew that Indian tribes are already, hey, he's talking to an Indian tribe in this case. It's the Cherokee Nation. And that federal tribe or Indian tribe lost their land. That's how they do federal Indians. Imagine what they would do to non-federal Indians. If you're denying civilized Indians, wait a minute, civilized Indians became Christians, right? So why didn't Jesus make you treat them better and let them have their lands? You treat them like yesterday's old slaves. Get on board with the church. Why are you doing that if they conform to your religion? They're civilized. That's why the whole notion of a civilized tribe is just completely asinine, y'all. That's why I said they have nothing to offer you, y'all, but a whole brand new lower level of slavery. So in the John Marshall cases, this is the only case, by the way, because I did a word search. This is the only case that mentions Indians not taxed at all. Okay? That's why we're looking at it. But what he's saying, if it wasn't for that damn article, and he said, he numbered it in his own backward way, right? He said, how we know he's talking about that article, he says, in the first article, let me see. Well, how do you put it? Of the second section, I'm sorry, the third clause of the second section of the first article. That's like he's doing like a backward spell, y'all. He's trying to sort of reverse the article with a reversal spell of some sort. I don't know why he can't say Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. Why would you go backward with it? Backward, Mr. Backward. Guided by these principles of complete domination of a colonizer, I come to consider the third, here we go again, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the first of the Constitution, which provides for the apportionment, blah, 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 excluding Indians not taxed. This clause embraces not only the old but the new states to be formed. So he's going to lay this, on the new states. So they got to act like those territories are actually states. Okay, they're going to apply all this bullshit to the newly formed fake states because really they're territories. Everything west of the Mississippi basically is a territory of the United States, unless somehow they were not. And like I think I don't know. There's something up with California. We gotta look further to that. I think that's something somehow the Moors got hold of California at some point. I don't know when, but we got that would be a whole other. That's why it's called California. It was named after a caliph, right? Something like that, right? Califia, Queen Califia, a whole Moor. Okay. Or an Indian so influenced by Moors that she called herself Califia. I don't know. I don't know. But I know there's something up with California, y'all. Something different. I just never looked at it yet. But so far, what the judge is saying, if the clause Indians not taxed had not been inserted, all of the Indians in all the states would be included in the federal numbers and within the boundaries of all the states. So when your states are taking over my land, of course I'm going to fall in your boundaries, but that doesn't mean I fall in your jurisdiction, bitch. Pardon my French. All of this is so ugly, y'all. It's unbelievable that this even took place. I just, it's hard to wrap your full mind around this. How could such injustice go on for so long? Well, partly is you have Moors misleading Indians. They're steering you into commerce rather than steering you to Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, like this judge just did. He's saying if it wasn't for that damn article, all y'all Indians would be federal. So that's how I know that we're not supposed to be federal. You see, Indians? But we got to call it up because ain't nobody going to do it. And it sounds like he's saying here, uh, unless by use of express words of exclusion. The insertion of this clause conveys a clear, definite declaration that there were no independent sovereign nations or states, foreign or domestic, within their boundaries, which should exclude them from federal enumeration. That don't sound right, though, because it says that we are excluded. But they're saying the insertion of the clause. Oh, I see. So before it was inserted, he's trying to say before we threw these Indians a bone of deception, before that clause existed, there were no independent sovereign nations or states for, but we just read all about the sovereignty of Indians. So what the hell is he talking about? This whole video started, what were we talking about? How very sovereign Indians were and seen, except everybody by this judge, apparently. That's why we don't want to be in the federal system, y'all. They have a whole different way of looking at Indians. They're looking at you through the lens of the doctrine of discovery. But someone has to slap them across the face with the repudiation of the doctrine of discovery. What Indians are up for that task? Well, like I said, we might want to consider a petition of Indians not taxed, not enumerated, not counted. We have a right to be that Indian. From there, we're going to need land, right? And let the true games begin. Let the real shit begin, I should say, because these are actually not games. Let life begin, real life. So he's saying the insertion of the clause conveys a clear, definite declaration that there were no independent. So in other words, they had to insert that clause because if that clause wasn't there, there was no other bodies or communities within the states that were excluded. from the action of the federal Constitution unless by the use of express words of exclusion. Uh, so I think what he's saying is because the Cherokee tribes or whatever don't use or express words of exclusion because what? They're civilized, right? And for that, with that comes the Commerce Clause, because now the government is seeing you as a what you are, a federally recognized tribe. So now you are no longer the type of Indian that would be included, or I'm sorry, excluded from this whole federal mind games and Ponzi schemes. So I hope you get what is going on here. Express words of exclusion. So we have to express that we are excluded as American Indians, not taxed. But then we got to turn around and say, however, if I do form tribes, I do not have to be federally recognized. Nowhere in the Constitution is the word federal recognized even appearing, let alone civilized tribes. That's not in the Constitution. So what does that mean? This government has to deal with any kind of tribe, and that any kind of tribe includes Indian not taxed tribe. So the new kid in town is the Indian not taxed tribe because they have no right to stop sovereign Indians who are not part of their federal system from gathering around them, uncivilized, non-federally recognized, sovereign, truly sovereign tribes. The footing is there. We have to build upon it. And then from there, we'll be somewhat like that damn Iroquois turtle. We'll just grow from there, okay? So let's think about petitions. Thankfully to the ancestors and to the many Indians who watched my last video, we have more Indians who are like, you know, of the same mind that we should be Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indians because the civilized tribes have nothing to offer us, I'm sorry, but more slavery. Indians who are ready to pick up their birthright as Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 Indians who require land and the right to gather into uncivilized tribes that are not under the federal government, let's get a petition going. Okay, so this will be the beginning of perhaps we need to start out as a virtual uncivilized tribe. But what you're going to do, you still have to claim your original Indian designation, right? So if you're an Iroquois that does not agree with the civilized Iroquois, well, you can be an uncivilized free sovereign Indian, right? Why not? The point here, guys, is we're no longer going to be instructed by Moors. That's the goal here. So no matter what kind of Indian you are, what we're basically saying is we're no longer listening to Moors because all they do is lead us into a burning house. They tricked Martin Luther King into leading us into a burning house, and that's all they know how to do. They should have been told us that we're not under the jurisdiction like this judge just did in the damn Supreme Court, y'all. He just said if it wasn't for that damn Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, I'll be able to dominate all these Negroes. But if they don't say nothing, I'm going to go ahead and dominate them anyway. If they don't have words of exclusion, express. So our petition will be our express words of exclusion. Okay. And you know, the corporation going to come with all kinds of bullshit, trying to come against that. There is nothing. First of all, this whole shit should be shut down because the doctrine of discovery was repudiated. You know, what am I saying? I'm saying None of this system should even be here because what brought it here has just been repudiated. Now it's been going on 2 years now, yo. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop, yo? Come on, how many? How many? How many? So, this was a real important thing that I've been wanting to show, and I'm glad I did. But now I have to close this video because we don't want it to be too long. And I want to say again, I'm going to stop our share for now. Thank you so much for watching. I want to say again, thank you so much for uh, helping me to reach my first 1K number of subscribers. I thank you so much. I think you have more ability when you have a certain number of subscribers with YouTube. I think there's certain things you can do if you have a certain amount of subscribers. I forgot what they are, but it has something to do with, I don't know, posting different I think surveys. Something. I don't know. I gotta look it up. But anyway, thank you so sincerely for watching this video. And thank you so sincerely for tuning in for the last video that you made, my second most viral sort of kind of videos. Yeah. The first one, if you get a chance, was America is an old civilization in Africa. Yeah. So parting is such sweet sorrow, but I thank you so much. I truly appreciate your time and your comments. Most of them were very positive. It's just, this has never happened on this channel that I had a video so watched in such a short period of time, as well as had so many subscribers in such a short period of time. So I'm beyond grateful. I'm going to, stay positive about it. I know sometimes people lose subscribers, but this is still, a time for me to say thank you and to celebrate this little milestone. Till next time, be and stay. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, Indians, until we reach our full, peaceful, civil, if you want to use that word, sovereign position on all of our lands. Till next time.